Snow falls gently in your imagination, doesn't it? You're picturing Christmas like a postcard. Cozy firelight, cinnamon on the air, maybe some twinkling lights strung across a perfect little room. You know, the kind of Christmas where everyone pretends to be happy, even though Aunt Linda has had 3 glasses of wine too many. But that's not the Christmas I'm dragging you into. No, you're about to spend your holiday inside a medieval village, where survival itself was the only tradition worth keeping. And the highlight of the feast wasn't cookies, wasn't pudding, wasn't even roasted goose. It was coffin cooked meat. That's right. Instead of a gleaming pot or pan, villagers shoved their Christmas dinner into a wooden coffin, balanced it over the flames, and prayed to God, or maybe to whoever was still lingering inside, that dinner would be edible before the roof collapsed from snow. And here's the kicker. You would have done it too. Don't shake your head. Don't say you wouldn't. You sitting there with your overpriced hot chocolate packet and your smug sense of modernity. You've never been actually starving. Imagine it. Your stomach clenching so tight you can't sleep. The only food left a few shriveled onions and a wedge of bread so hard it could break teeth. Then finally Christmas arrives and someone hauls out a coffin. No body inside, hopefully. Just planks of wood seasoned by, let's call it life experience. Do you complain? No. You salivate. You thank heaven that the dead were generous enough to donate their furniture to the living. Suddenly, roast meat from a coffin doesn't sound so bad. It sounds like survival wrapped in smoke. But let's not sugarcoat it. Picture the scene. The hut is drafty, the air damp with mildew. Smoke curls upward from a hearth that's little more than stones stacked in a circle. Children crowd close, their noses red, their lips cracked from cold. You crouch beside them, knees aching against the dirt floor, and there, dominating the fire, is the coffin. Long, narrow, blackened by years of use, or maybe by something more sinister. It creaks as it heats, the wood groaning like an old man stretching his joints. The firelight dances across its surface, casting coffin-shaped shadows that stretch against the walls. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone else laughs too loudly, trying to break the tension. But you can't stop staring, because while everyone else sees dinner, you see death's furniture. You know this box was carved not for pork or goose, but for flesh of another kind. And then the smell hits you. At first it's just smoke, sharp, earthy, biting your nose and eyes. But then fat begins to drip. It sizzles on the coffin's base, mingling with resin and charred wood. The aroma blooms into the air, thick and greedy. Your mouth waters against your will. Hunger is cruel that way. It doesn't care where the food comes from. You swallow, throat dry, stomach twisting. The thought creeps in. What if the coffin isn't clean? What if splinters of rot, old dirt, even the memory of decay seep into the meat? You shove the thought away, because the alternative is chewing on nothing but hopelessness. Now, you'd expect the villagers to whisper about how weird this is. But no, they brag. They say coffin-cooked meat tastes different. Better, smokier, somehow more festive. Like the wood itself blesses the food with strength. Maybe it's the hunger talking. Maybe it's desperation disguised as optimism. But they'll swear to you hand on heart that coffin meat is the best you'll ever eat. And who are you to argue? You're a guest in this nightmare holiday dinner. You smile, nod, and pretend you don't feel a chill when the coffin pops in the fire like knuckles cracking. Oh, and here's where I do the thing every storyteller is supposed to do, right? The shameless plug. But hey, at least I'm thematically consistent. If you're enjoying this horrifying little tale, you should probably subscribe, because I guarantee your Christmas dinner will taste 10 times better when paired with the mental image of medieval peasants grilling in coffins. And while you're at it, check the pinned comment for the Christmas calendar. Unlike coffin meat, it won't come with splinters or ghost seasoning. Anyway, back to the feast. The meat is turning golden now, the fat bubbling, the smell so rich it makes even the dogs whimper. You edge closer, drawn like everyone else. The coffin moans as the wood expands, a sound that makes your skin prickle. Someone jokes. Sounds like the dead want to taste too. Nervous laughter. But you notice the way their eyes dart to the shadows. You notice how quickly the laughter dies. Superstition is never far in a place like this. They believe the coffin still belongs to whoever it was carved for. Cooking inside it is like borrowing from the dead, and debts like that always get collected. And yet no one leaves. Not a single villager turns away. Hunger pins them here, hunger and the promise of warmth. You realize you're the same. Even with the coffin groaning, even with dread squirming in your stomach, you can't tear your gaze from the meat. Your lips part. You inhale the smoke, you imagine the first bite sliding across your tongue. You hate yourself for it, but you're ready to devour whatever comes out of that coffin, even if it comes with ghosts attached. The crackling grows louder, the fire hissing as fat drips faster. The coffin shifts on the stones, and for one insane second you imagine it lifting, not from the fire, but from something inside trying to rise. Your heart slams. You blink hard, shake your head, tell yourself it's just the heat, just the hunger, just your nerves. But when you glance around, you see the same fear flickering in the villagers' eyes. They all saw it too. And just like that, you realize Christmas here isn't about comfort. It isn't about joy or family. It's about bargaining with hunger, with superstition, with death itself. Tonight, you will eat. But what else you swallow along with the meat? That remains to be seen. You don't sleep that first night. The fire shrinks to a red eye, and the coffin cools to a dull hush that still sounds like breath if you listen too hard. Children snore in blankets that smell like smoke and lanolin. Someone's dog twitches, chasing a phantom rabbit through whatever dream dogs have when bellies are full for once. You sit on a stool that wobbles, cradling the last inch of broth in a wooden cup, and try not to think about bones. The village is quiet, but the quiet is theatrical, like a stage holding its breath. Then the bells start again. Not from a church tower, you'd have seen the ropes move, but from the tree line, as if the forest developed a taste for ceremony. 3 slow tolls, a pause, 3 again. Nobody gets up, nobody needs to. Everyone is already awake, pretending not to be. An elder coughs into the straw. A child whispers, "It's only the iron contracting," which would be convincing if there were any iron. You tip back the broth. It tastes like ash and winter and something old that doesn't want to be remembered, the way names erode from headstones. In the morning, the coffin looks smaller. It's a trick of perspective or guilt. Frost rims the grain where steam fled and froze, turning the wood into a map of pale rivers. The butcher, who is a butcher only in December and a thatcher every other week, runs a palm along the lid and nods, as if approving a horse. He says they'll scrub it, salt it, smoke it over alder, then line it with fresh reeds before tonight's feast. You nod back like you know what any of that means. Mostly you hear the unspoken part. There will be another feast. You pretend to help. You carry pails from the well and feel the water bite your knuckles. A clean pain that makes the world crisp. You spread ash across the floor to keep the damp from learning your name. You stack wood you can't feel. The coffin gets a new rope handle, braided from nettle fiber and stubbornness. When no one watches, you press your ear to the board and listen. There is nothing, and then there is everything. Your heartbeat, the hush of the room, a faint scratching that is probably mice, almost certainly mice, definitely mice, absolutely not fingernails. By afternoon, the village shakes itself awake properly. Someone tunes a fiddle until the notes shiver like icicles. Someone else drags in a log so big it needs a name and calls it Yule with the possessiveness of a jealous lover. Children practice carols that sound suspiciously like warnings if you pay attention to the minor keys. The coffin returns to the fire with ceremonial indifference, shored up on stones blackened by years of scraping. Meat slides in again, wrapped in woven reeds and hope. The butcher crosses himself. You don't, but your hands fold anyway, as if remembering. The flavor tonight is stronger. Maybe it's the alder smoke. Maybe it's the rumor that last winter someone actually used the coffin for its intended purpose, before spring argued otherwise. You don't ask. The answer would only do damage. Grease paints the air until the whole hut gleams. People edge closer. Stories wake. They tell you about a winter when wolves walked through the lane like they paid taxes, about a midwife who could stitch the sky with red thread, about a boy who vanished after licking icicles from the graveyard gate. He returned on 12th night, smiling too widely. You try to laugh at the right places. You even manage it once when a farmer swears his goat can predict the weather by sneezing in Latin. But your eyes keep dragging back to the coffin, to the way the lid leans against the wall like a guest waiting to be seated. Its shadow seems longer than the object deserves. At one point the lid slips, tapping the floor with a polite little knock, and the entire room freezes. Nobody breathes. You could hear a breadcrumb land. The butcher moves it back with a tenderness usually reserved for babies or explosives. Outside, snow drifts like patient applause. The wind can't find a way in, so it circles the roof and sulks. You step into the doorway for air and watch the blue hour arrive, that bruised moment when the world decides whether to be night. On the far hill, a dark figure stands by the lich gate, still as a milestone. You blink, and it's still there. Not moving, not gesturing, just supervising the distance. When you tell the butcher, he says, "We haven't had a sexton in years," and adds another log to the fire like that explains anything at all. Dinner arrives with the frantic ceremony of people who have almost learned joy. Bowls travel hand to hand, and the same trenchers hold both laughter and grease. Your portion glows. The meat shreds under your spoon, and steam climbs your face like a blessing. You taste. It is smoke and salt and that tiny sour undertow again, like the ghost of vinegar reconsidering its choices. You keep eating because everyone keeps eating, because relief is contagious, because you want to belong to the warm human river flowing through this room. The figure on the hill chooses that moment to leave. You sleep eventually, because bodies are simple machines and warmth is a promise they obey. The bells do not ring. The lid does not fall. Morning cracks the sky with a clean sound, and you wake certain the worst has passed. It hasn't. In the ashes where the coffin sat, there is a print not made by wood. A narrow oval, deeper at the head, piled rim of sifted grey like a shoreline. Someone has lain there and risen, someone heavy. The butcher will not look at it. He covers the mark with fresh logs and says quietly, "The coffin cooks fish tonight." Fish. Somehow it feels worse than pork or goose. Meat is heavy, noble, expected at a feast. But fish is slippery, liminal, a thing that belongs more to rivers and whispers than to Christmas. Yet here you are, standing in the smoky hut as the coffin is salted, scrubbed and lined for tonight's supper. The butcher lowers a bundle of carp into its hollow belly. Their eyes are still glassy, their scales flashing in the firelight like coins meant to pay some ferryman. And when the first sizzle rises, you swear it sounds less like food cooking and more like water boiling in a grave. The children complain. They wanted goose again, but their mothers hush them, reminding them that food is food, and a coffin doesn't care what fills it, so long as bellies are quiet after. You watch the fat drip and spit, the smell mingling with the resin of pine logs, creating a perfume halfway between incense and rot. Hunger tightens your stomach, but something else tightens your throat. Every crackle of the fire is punctuated by the faint creak of the coffin's joints, as though it resents carrying such paltry cargo after tasting richer flesh. Stories bloom again, as they always do when fear needs disguising. One man swears that last Christmas, after eating coffin fish, he dreamt of being dragged under ice by pale hands that held him there until dawn. Another insists that a coffin once cooked eels so perfectly they wriggled even after being served, forcing the family to chase them through the hut like slippery shadows. Laughter follows these tales, but it is sharp, brittle laughter, the kind that vanishes quickly and leaves the room colder than before. You shift uneasily, listening as the fiddle strikes up again, its notes scraping thinly against the rafters. The music tries to dance but keeps tripping. Children clap out of time. Someone stamps their boots too hard, and for a moment it sounds like a heartbeat too large for the room. You retreat closer to the coffin, not because you want to, but because hunger drags you there like a leash. The fish are splitting now, skin curling back, bones glinting white beneath the golden surface. Steam rolls out, carrying with it a sharp tang that prickles your eyes. You taste salt before your lips even touch the food. The lid waits where it always does, propped against the far wall. Tonight it leans at a different angle, as if it has shifted on its own. No one acknowledges this, but everyone notices. Each time someone's gaze snags on it, their voice falters. Even the butcher, who claims to believe in nothing but sharp knives and dry wood, keeps glancing sideways like a man expecting his name to be called from behind. You start to imagine the lid breathing, rising, falling, rising, falling. You blink until your eyes sting, but the rhythm is still there, always there. Dinner is served, and bowls are filled with steaming fish, the flesh soft enough to collapse under a spoon. You take your share, hands trembling despite the heat. The taste is delicate, layered with smoke, faintly sweet, and yet bitter at the edges, as if the coffin had opinions about the menu. You chew slowly, aware of every crack of bone between your teeth. Around you, villagers eat quickly, urgently, as though the faster they consume, the less time the coffin has to notice them. Conversation falters into murmurs, murmurs into silence, silence into the sound of wood shifting again, louder this time. Then the bells return. Not faint, not distant, but clear. Right outside the door, one toll, heavy as a stone dropped in a well. 2, 3. The room freezes. Every spoon halts halfway to every mouth. The fire gutters as if the bells are pulling air out of the room. You rise slowly, legs unsteady. You push open the door. Snow swirls like torn linen. The lane is empty. No rope, no tower, no hand striking bronze. Just sound, impossible and deliberate, vibrating in your bones. When you step back inside, all eyes turn to the coffin. The fish are gone, bowls emptied, bellies filled, but the coffin is no longer still. It rocks gently as if waves move beneath it. Back and forth, wooden ribs groaning. The butcher lunges forward, slamming a hand on the side, muttering a prayer so fast the words blur. The rocking stops. The fire hisses. A log collapses into ash with a sigh-like resignation. No one speaks. No one dares. The coffin sits, obedient once more, fish fat sizzling to silence. But every villager knows, and you know too, this isn't just cooking. This is bargaining. Every meal taken is a debt. Every flavor is borrowed. And one day the coffin will want payment in full. That night you dream, not of fish, not of fire, but of lying inside the coffin yourself. The wood is damp against your back, and above you the lid lowers, slow, deliberate, sealing the world away. You open your mouth to scream, but only smoke pours out. You wake with your tongue tasting of salt and your hands clutching splinters. Morning limps into the village like a stray dog, ribs showing, breath smoking in the cold. You step outside, and the snow squeaks with that dry, glassy sound that means it will hurt your lungs if you run. The sky is the color of old tin. No bells, no figures on the hill. Only fences wearing hats of frost and the well rope stiff as a frozen vein. For 10 minutes you believe the strange peace, like a liar whose story finally sounds true. Inside, though, the coffin steams where it rests, and a smell like apples gone too far ripens in the corners. The butcher has laid out the day's plan in sentences as blunt as cleavers. Mend the hinge, fetch alder from the copse, trade salt for wheat, prepare the coffin for beef. Beef, he says with piety, like a psalm. People nod. They need something solid to bite, something that fights back before it surrenders. You carry wood until your arms hum. Your breath fogs the coffin lid as you lean to test the repaired hinge, and in the fog, an oval blooms. Exactly where a face would be if someone were leaning up from the inside to meet you. You swipe it away and laugh in the busy, friendly way that says, "Please don't notice I'm terrified." No one says anything. Everyone notices. The village holy man is not exactly a priest, more a patchwork of borrowed rites stitched to a practical apron. He arrives smelling of yeast and wood smoke, forehead smudged with flour like a reluctant blessing. He peers into the coffin, taps the boards, listens for answers that wood should not have. Then he declares briskly that the problem is not the coffin at all, but the calendar. The days, he says, are out of joint. Something walked through the hinge of time. Naturally, the prescription is complicated superstition. He orders bread cut in the shape of keys to lock the year behind you. He says the lid must be sprinkled with beer and turned sunwise 3 times before any beef touches it. He wants candles carved with little stairways, so the living can climb down and the dead can climb up without getting lost. Everyone nods with relief. Rules make fear hold still long enough to aim at it. While the candles are shaved into improbable theology, you fetch water from the stream. The ice has a skin like old glass that sighs when it breaks. You kneel and cup your hands, and the cold writes its name up your wrists. When you look down into the black pane, your reflection looks back wrong. Mouth closed when yours is open, eyes open when yours blink. For a second the water shows a lid lowering, then ripples erase it. Back in the hut, the holy man arranges his stairway candles on the hearth like a toy ladder to somewhere nobody should visit. He chants in a voice the exact pitch of wind in a keyhole. Somebody giggles and is shushed. Somebody coughs, and that cough sounds like the first strike of a bell. The coffin smells sweeter now, sap waking inside the wood, as if the box itself remembered trees and decided briefly to be a forest again. Afternoon bows and makes way for the blue hour again, and this time you meet it halfway, standing in the lane with your breath tethered to the sky. Children stamp patterns into the snow and call them charms. Someone's goat refuses the buyer and will not pass the coffin's door. It stares with slit eyes and chews slow judgment. From the hill, the lich gate watches. You think of walking there, then think of returning, and both thoughts taste like iron. Beef arrives at dusk, wrapped in damp cloth that once pretended to be a curtain. The butcher salts it with a seriousness that borders on worship, presses juniper into its flanks, and lowers it into the coffin with a sigh so gentle it could be apology. The first fat snaps like distant twigs. The room closes around the sound. People lean in the way plants lean toward windows. The holy man finishes his chant, pockets a heel of bread shaped like a key, and waits. You eat the smell before you ever touch the meat. It is everywhere, a cathedral of aroma built on smoke, salt, and the copper coin of blood. Your stomach inks its signature on the moment. The beef turns glossy, edges darkening, and the coffin speaks. A long, low creak that settles into silence like a warning set down on the table. Someone laughs bravely. Someone else crosses herself so fast the air squeaks. You steady your hands and pretend they were shaking from the cold. When the meat is carved, the knife slides as if guided. Slices fold over one another like red silk learning to be brown. Bowls travel again, the same battered procession of gratitude and greed. Your share trembles. You taste, and the beef is everything it promised. Smoke, fat, a sweetness from the juniper that surprises your tongue into believing in summers you've never seen. Then the undertow, that same faint sourness, nearer now, familiar as a name you swear you've never spoken. Outside, the bells return with perfect timing, as if they waited until your mouth was full. 1, 2, 3. The room exhales in a single shudder. The holy man turns, candle ladder in his fist like a toy destined for a dangerous child, and says, "Whoever is ringing, let them in." The door opens on its own. Wind shoulders the room. Snow spins like ash, and something steps across the threshold, carrying no sound, but bells, 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 that seem to swing from the emptiness where a face should be. It pauses by the coffin, leans as if smelling, then tilts its invisible head toward you. The bells hush. Your spoon falls. In that silence, a hinge clicks, and the lid begins to lift from within. The lid doesn't so much rise as remember how to breathe. Your throat locks. The butcher lunges, but the holy man catches his sleeve and shakes his head once, a tiny, terrified no. The room shrinks to a ring of faces around the coffin, and a single widening seam of darkness. Pitch smoke folds inward, as if the fire is bowing. You taste metal. You hear a slow, deliberate sliding, like a book being pulled from a shelf that still loves it. Then the lid settles at a slant, and heat rolls out like a prayer, exhaled by something that never learned to kneel. Inside the gap is only shadow, but the shadow has temperature, texture, intention. You know with the certainty of someone eavesdropping on their own future, that if you look down into it for too long, you will see your face arriving from the wrong direction. The holy man lifts his stairway candle, tiny steps chiseled into tallow, and sets it on the coffin's lip. Flame pares the dark like a cautious knife. He whispers a greeting no language should host. The dark answers with the sound of wet wood giving way, a patient, intimate groan. Someone laughs to break it. The laugh breaks them instead. You feel the room lean, as if the whole hut has quietly decided to become a boat. Liquid shivers inside bowls, catching orange fire in little trembling suns. The butcher makes a sign against envy, or hunger, or both. He speaks the name of whoever the coffin was commissioned for, a winter long ended, and thanks them for their continued hospitality. The name leaves a taste of pennies. The shadow deepens, like approval. The bells that brought the visitor have stopped, but their silence still swings. It makes a draft around your ankles. It tugs your breath. If you listen too closely, you can hear the shape of an absent clapper, knocking once for every heartbeat that tries to outrun itself. The holy man lowers his candle a fraction more. Wax crawls over his knuckles like a tame, urgent animal. The lid shifts another inch. The coffin exhales. You expect to smell like graveyards. You get something worse. Wet hay, hot iron, baked milk, and the breath of someone who has slept too long and cannot remember their promises. It presses your tongue flat. It makes your teeth itch. In that moment, you understand how the coffin seasons the meat. What everyone calls sourness is this breath, this patient residue of ending. You swallow, and swallowing feels like agreeing. The visitor moves without moving, the way heat does. You see it only by what it refuses to touch. Sparks bend away, smoke pulls back in frayed ribbons, and frost blossoms along the rim where warm hands should be. It regards the beef already carved, then studies the empty bowls lined up like little open mouths. When its attention passes over yours, your name forgets you. You stand there unaddressed, grateful and offended. At last, it turns to the holy man. The stairway candle gutters, climbs, as if tiny pilgrims are trudging up and down inside it. The holy man bows. He says that the box has been useful, that the village is grateful, that the debt is noted and will be ended with thanks after 12th night. He says that no one will lie where bread has been baked, not this year, not if mercy is listening. The visitor inclines a space where a head might be. The bells return, but only inside your ears. Agreement feels like a temperature change. The hut loosens. The fire remembers how to be ordinary. People inhale as if they had been underwater and only just negotiated oxygen. The lid floats down until it kisses the coffin's rim and rests there, not shut, not open. Like a mouth deciding whether to tell a story it promised to keep. You sway, suddenly emptied. Hunger rushes in to occupy the vacancy fear leaves behind. After there is cleanup the way there is weather, inevitable, participatory, vaguely humiliating. You scrub bowls smooth with snow. You unravel nettle twine from the coffin's handles and rebraid it tighter, grateful for a task with edges. Children chase crumbs like sparrows. The butcher hums a harvest song and gets every line wrong. The holy man pockets the stairway candle's stub and tells you not to dream on your back. You promise and know you are lying. Night divides itself into manageable pieces. You hold one, a sliver of sleep brittle as sugar. In it you stand at the lich gate and ring a bell with a tongue made from your own breath. Snow drifts in, polite and accumulating. On the third toll the coffin answers, not with sound but with hunger, and the gate opens inward to a stairway carved from tallow. You wake with your fist clenched around nothing that still burns. Morning limps back grinning, because it knows secrets. The mark in the ash has deepened to a more precise oval, as though someone traced yesterday's impression with a more patient hand. The butcher avoids looking at it by staring too hard. The goat finally enters the byre and promptly faints, which everyone agrees is encouraging. The plan for today, someone says, is simple. Stew, songs, and not dying. You help cut onions until your eyes confess. You cube the leftover beef that never made it to anyone's bowl and pretend not to notice how much of it there is. The coffin becomes a pot again, lined with reeds, smudged with juniper, dignified by usefulness. When the stew begins to talk in small, happy bubbles, the village relaxes into a shape that could be called hope, if you couldn't smell the sour breath riding beneath the steam. Outside, the lich gate waits like a punctuation mark too heavy for the sentence. Inside, the lid rests lightly, listening. When the first spoon lifts, the bells will test the air again, counting mouths. By noon, the stew has a voice, the kind of gentle murmuring that makes a room unclench. You hover near the coffin, as if close proximity might earn you extra warmth by osmosis. The holy man folds his apron like a flag and declares the broth acceptable to both farmer and phantom. Someone carves X's into loaves to let the misery out. You steal a sniff above the rim and get walloped by the familiar undertow, sour as a grudge. It lingers, patient, while the juniper and onions try to smile over it. Steam paints the rafters. Laughter returns carefully, wearing a helmet. The butcher tells a joke about a miller, a widow, and a stubborn donkey that refuses to witness a wedding unless bribed with salted pears. It lands well enough to make shoulders loosen. Bowls queue like hopeful pilgrims. The first ladle rises, dripping, and the room leans forward as one organism. No bells, no lid twitch, just the gentle stove breath of a meal becoming real. You dare to imagine the afternoon ending in naps rather than negotiations. The holy man insists on serving the oldest first, hierarchy being the only sorcery he trusts. The elders lean in, eyes shiny, hands mapped with winters. Each sip turns their gaze inward, as if they're hearing music nobody else can afford. When your bowl arrives, it glows like a small moon. You lift it, and the heat climbs your nose with a sweetness almost floral. For 3 mouthfuls, you are a believer. The 4th finds the undertow again, the whisper of endings, and your belief discovers a polite exit. Children gobble in noisy trances, cheeks shining, A girl with a ribbon gnawed flat asks if ghosts get seconds. Her mother says only when they bring their own bowl. Everyone laughs, then remembers they did not set a place for anyone who rings from the tree line. That's when the goat sneezes from the byre, twice in Latin according to witnesses, and the room groans because prophecy is exhausting. You reach for bread, but the loaf skates away a fingertip because your hand is shaking. It's not fear, you tell yourself. It's calories arriving after days of negotiated famine. The stew gathers courage in your belly and grows ideas. If this continues, the village could survive until Thor. If this continues, rot will fail to write its name in your lungs. If this continues, the coffin will remain merely furniture you side-eye. You look at the lid, propped like a door never chosen. It looks back, which is ridiculous, which is exactly why you blink first. Afternoon loosens its grip, and chores resume in little triumphs. Ash is carried out. Bowls are scraped and licked and praised. Someone strings dried orange slices by the window, and the light makes them into coins for a tender-hearted god. The holy man declares the hut briefly clean of intention. He pockets that tallow stairway again, thumb reading its tiny steps like braille for the anxious. When you thank him for keeping the bells at bay, he says, "I don't. I only teach people to hear other things." Outside, sky breaks into gentle bruises, blue washing into lilac. You walk to the well because moving feels like bargaining with luck. Snow complains underfoot in neat syllables. Past the lich gate, the hill carries old footprints that don't match the village's arithmetic. At the well, you lean in. The water shows you the hut as it is, then as it will be without smoke, then as it was before roofs had the idea to exist. When you blink, the water shrugs and remembers to be a mirror again. On the way back you notice it. A smell threading the wind, greener than stew, wetter than snow. Alder sap maybe, or river moss, or the breath of a cellar where apples decide which one will rot first. It slides between houses, friendly, inevitable. The goat bawls once, then forgets how. You cross the threshold and taste the smell at the back of your tongue. The coffin looks ordinary. The lid looks bored. The stew pot, emptied, glares with a shine so pure it feels accusatory. People are drowsy, brave, briefly human in the way of stomachs recently convinced. The butcher tells a second joke. It dies en route to its destination. Silence arrives, like a civic duty. You realize the aldersour is not in the wind, but in the walls. The same patient signature you've been pretending belonged to myth. The holy man straightens, head cocked, listening. He raises his candle ladder, unlit, as if the gesture itself could be a bridge. Somewhere outside, snow shifts. Somewhere inside, wood answers. The lid twitches just once like a dream deciding yes. Everyone sees it. Everyone pretends they didn't. The butcher starts a song about geese and debts, and nights that forget to end. Voices join, ragged, hopeful, determined to keep terror on a short leash. The lid twitches again, twice polite, like someone knocking on a door they already own. The song deflates into humming. The alder sour thickens enough to chew. You taste iron. You taste yes. You taste an appointment being kept. No bells, not one, that's worse. With bells you can count. Without them, time becomes a wet rope. The holy man lights the stairway candle and sets it on the hearth, away from the coffin, a compromise meaningful only to people too tired to invent new rules. He says, "We will bless what is left," and lifts the empty stew pot like an offering. The lid answers by rolling a thumb's width on its props. It should be impossible. It is obvious. You are the one who steps forward. Your body nominates you without checking the minutes. You kneel by the coffin as if tying a boot, as if offering a commonplace correction to a piece of furniture. The heat under your palms is a heartbeat too steady. You say softly, "We borrowed, we are paying," and lay the heel of bread you saved on the rim like a coin on a tongue. The lid pauses, considering the exchange. The room leans in, so quietly the smoke forgets to rise. From the hill, a wind trips over the lich gate and arrives as a draft that smells like river stones. It slips beneath the lid and lifts it a finger's worth. Dark collects, pleased to be consulted. You could close it. You should close it. You begin to close it, and the dark puts its palm against your palm from the other side, warm as stew, patient as winter. For one astonished heartbeat, you are holding a hand that is not there. The candle ladder spits a bright, terrified tear. The lid settles again, neither open nor shut. An undecided mouth. The alder sour thins to a thread you can breathe around. The holy man lowers the pot. People resume being people, badly. You back away on knees that vote for exile. In the ash beside the stones, a new mark appears. Not the oval of a body, but the neat, undeniable imprint of 4 bowls in a row, pressed as if by invisible hunger, queuing politely for tomorrow. And from the tree line at last, the bells begin to count. The bells do not rush, they never do. They swing the air slow, indulgent, as though savoring each toll. 1, 2, 3. They pause long enough for your pulse to think it is safe, then begin again. The sound pours down the lane and puddles at the door, deliberate as a guest who knows the invitation was already written. Inside the hut, no one breathes deeply. Breaths are shallow, rationed like flour. Even the dogs whimper without barking, as if they too understand contracts. The holy man closes his eyes, murmurs a number you can't follow, then sets his stairway candle in the window. Its flame shakes against the frost, a little lighthouse begging the fog not to learn the way in. The butcher picks up a cleaver, then remembers steel is useless against whatever brings bells without towers, and sets it back down, embarrassed. Children press against mothers, wide-eyed, but not crying. Crying feels too loud for a room already so full of listening. You try not to, but you look at the coffin. Its lid rests smug as a cat that just noticed it is worshipped in Egypt. The wood hums faintly under the fire's breath, a resonance that doesn't belong to sap. You imagine it rocking again, that obscene seesaw of invitation. Instead it waits, patient, as if the bells outside are only its tongue speaking at a distance. You remember the mark in the ash, the 4 bowls pressed neat as prayers, and the sour flavor ghosting every bite. Debt. It was always debt. The holy man finally stands, back straighter than his bones deserve, and declares in a tone so brittle it might cut, "We will share. Not meat, not stew, share." The villagers nod, as if that single word explains the terms. They shuffle, rearrange, place what scraps of bread, rind, and dried berries they can summon into bowls. Even the children place crusts. The pile looks laughable against hunger's vast appetite. But when they bow their heads, the act feels heavier than any banquet. You are handed a bowl chipped but whole, and you drop a piece of bread into it. The motion feels like signing your name at the bottom of a long contract, written in invisible ink. When the holy man carries the bowls to the hearth and sets them by the coffin's foot, the bells stop. Just stop. The silence rings louder. Your skin prickles in relief you can't trust. The lid twitches. Once. Twice. Then it stills, but something about the stillness feels like approval. The fire exhales. The sour thread in the air recedes a fraction, as if hunger stepped back to count. The holy man takes this as a victory. He nods, dismisses everyone to sleep, and pockets his stairway candle, though it has melted down to a nub that barely deserves a name. People scatter gratefully, desperate to treat the ordinary floor as sanctuary. You lie down in your corner of straw and rough blanket, but sleep is a bargain you can't afford. Every time you close your eyes, you see the coffin lid lifting in slow increments until it swallows the sky. You hear the bells behind your ribs, tolling your pulse. You feel again the press of that invisible hand against your palm, warm, patient, promising. When you doze, it's shallow, brittle, filled with dreams where you eat and never feel full. Morning, when it comes, is weak. A sun pale as watered milk drags itself above the tree line. Smoke clings low, reluctant to rise. Villagers move slowly, drained by relief that never fully materialized. The coffin squats in the ashes, damp from melted frost, looking both ordinary and smug. No new marks in the floor, no bowls rearranged, yet everyone moves around it with exaggerated politeness, as though it had joined the council overnight. Breakfast is pitiful. Thin beer, a scrap of rye, onions sliced translucent enough to see the table through, but no one complains. Complaining feels like daring the bells to prove a point. The butcher jokes weakly that at least onions don't need coffins to taste right. The silence that answers him makes him blush red as raw beef. You chew your piece of bread and taste nothing but caution. Tasks resume, because tasks are safer than thoughts. You gather kindling, scrape frost from shutters, mend rope. All the while the coffin waits, lid leaning, its silence a weight. Children invent games where they pretend to ring bells with sticks, each peal punctuated by nervous glances at the tree line. The goat recovers enough to stare at the coffin for hours, chewing slowly as if memorizing. Animals always know first. By afternoon, the sky grows restless, clouds pressing low, heavy with snow that refuses to fall. The holy man paces, muttering, as though trying to negotiate with weather. Finally, he announces the coffin must be moved. "We have allowed it to sit too long in one place," he says. Roots grow. No one questions, though the idea of lifting it draws groans. Still they obey. You join, hands under rough wood, and for the first time feel its weight. Heavier than logic, denser than oak, filled with an inertia that seems almost personal. Moving it feels like dragging an unwilling guest who still insists they own the house. You heave, grunt, stagger, and finally set it down on fresh stones. The lid rattles once in protest, then stills. Everyone backs away, breath steaming, faces pale. The holy man sprinkles beer across it and mutters about thresholds. The butcher sharpens a knife that will never matter. The goat sneezes again, mercifully in plain goat, and people laugh too hard, desperate for the relief of silliness. Dusk threatens early, thick with snow that still holds itself back. Inside, the coffin looks larger for having moved, as though proximity to new earth granted it confidence. The fire crackles, bowls are washed, straw is shaken, but every sound bends around that silent box. When someone finally asks what's for dinner, the question feels like blasphemy. No answer comes, because deep down, you all know, dinner is no longer something you choose, it's something the coffin decides. And in the pause after the question, faint and deliberate, the bells begin again. The bells speak like teeth chattering in a mouth too calm for the weather. 1, 2, 3. Then a pause long enough to let dread hang a wreath on every window. You feel the room gather itself, shoulders narrowing, hands tightening, breaths abbreviating like notes in a miser's ledger. The holy man sets his jaw the way a carpenter sets a wedge and says, "We will not open. We will feed." The verbs land on the table like tools. Feed what exactly, nobody asks. The answer is already in the air. Sour, sweet, alder sharp. That signature the coffin leaves like a watermark on every hour. The butcher produces a sack of barley and a fist of dried apples. Luxury disguised as penance. Children are appointed to count kernels into bowls, so the numbers will be busy and not go wandering where bells come from. You sort apple slices by color until your fingers smell like a cellar that forgot the year. The lid shifts a thumb's width, just enough to clear its throat. You don't move, but your pulse does, sprinting in place. The holy man lights his stairway candle, what's left of it, and plants it between the coffin and the door, as if to teach the distance some manners. "Sunwise," he mutters, and walks the flame in a small circle that wobbles with each draft. The circle holds. The bells do not stop, but they become background like wind negotiating shingles. Barley goes first, toasted in a pan black as the hours after midnight. The smell turns nutty, trustworthy, almost domestic. It argues with the coffin's sour breath and wins a few inches of air. Water follows, a thin ribbon that hisses and immediately regrets its optimism. You stir with a wooden spoon, worn down to a comfortable lie. The grains begin to swell, each one a tiny rescue. Dried apples join, little suns drowning without complaint. The room exhales in lowercase. Stories begin because they always do, because stories are the fat we pour into thin places. Someone tells of a winter when the river froze so completely that fish slept like coins under glass and could be harvested with a broom. Someone else swears their grandmother married a bell ringer and never slept properly again. Laughter rises and falls, a cautious tide avoiding the rocks where the lid sits, pretending to be furniture instead of punctuation. You ladle the porridge into bowls as it thickens into something that can hold a day together. The first mouths thank you with eyes rather than words. Warmth returns to faces in cautious gradients. You dare a taste, soft, smoky, faintly sweet, with that persistent undertow you're starting to recognize the way sailors recognize certain currents, useful until it isn't. You swallow and feel the warmth bloom behind your ribs, a hearth installed under sternum and spine. For a minute you are convinced survival is a verb with your name attached. Then the goat speaks again in a grammar nobody taught it. 3 sneezes, evenly spaced, followed by a long bleat shaped like a no. The butcher tries to laugh it away and fails. The bells answer with a single decisive toll. Conversation collapses into the kind of quiet that bruises. The lid lifts another finger's breadth and stops. The holy man doesn't try to close it. He only turns the stairway candle a fraction, as if angling a mirror to catch the little of whatever heaven is available. "We keep the mouths fed," he says, voice low, "and the debt remembers we are paying." Someone asks, "Whose mouths?" He says, "All of them." His hand trembles once and then continues being a hand. You carry a bowl toward the threshold because your feet have decided mercy is geography. The snow just outside the door has adopted the texture of sifted flour, unmarked and expectant. You set the bowl on the step. Steam lifts like a vow. Cold eats it politely. The bells hush for the space of 3 breaths, the exact number of spoonfuls a hungry child takes when told to share, then resume, satisfied but not sated. When you turn back, the bowl is empty. You did not see it empty. It just is. No one claps. Gratitude feels like intruding. The holy man nods once, the butcher once, the room once, a choreography of acknowledgements designed to keep panic from learning the steps. You resume ladling for the living. Porridge disappears at a human pace, bowls returning with little moons scraped into their bottoms. The lid doesn't move again, but it doesn't need to. Its patience is an occupation. Dusk presses its forehead to the windows. The sky outside keeps trying to snow and getting distracted. The lich gate on the hill holds still the way a warning holds still. Children doze in corners with porridge-slicked chins. The goat sleeps like a door that forgot which way to swing. You stack bowls. You stack courage. You discover both are lighter when you pretend. Night arrives and with it a peculiar hospitality. The hut becomes a ship on a black sea, and you are suddenly fond of everyone aboard. Even the coffin, which you hate in the way people hate what feeds them at unfair prices. The bells drift farther, or you learn how to tuck them behind your breathing. The holy man banked the fire to a red geography. He traces a cross in ash, and then another symbol older than his training. He does not explain. You do not ask. Sleep happens to other people first. You sit watch with the butcher and a girl still wearing a ribbon that gave up hours ago. The 3 of you share the last spoonfuls from the pan, an odd communion that tastes like wood smoke and surrender. The butcher says, "It will want meat tomorrow." The girl says, "It will want names." You say nothing because your name is busy trying not to remember the weight of an invisible hand. When the bells finally stop, it is not a victory. It is a held breath. The lid settles the tiniest fraction, a book closing to mark a page, not to end a story. In the ashes by the hearth, new prints bloom. 5 small ovals in a neat row, bowl-sized, leading from the door to the coffin and then back again, as if hunger took a walk to check on the architecture of its appetite. The holy man, half asleep, opens one eye and says, "We will need more barley." You dream without leaving the chair. In the dream, the lich gate is a mouth and the hill a tongue, and the village can't decide whether to be swallowed or sung. You walk up carrying a bowl that never empties, and every step is rung by a bell you can only hear under your feet. At the gate you meet yourself coming down, bowl empty, eyes generous with a sadness you recognize from mirrors. Dawn wears bruises. The sky at last remembers how to snow. Fat, slow flakes tumble like decisions. The village wakes to a world being erased and rewritten in sugar. The coffin waits, lid tilted, a question posed in wood. The holy man lifts the spent wick of his ladder candle and says, almost cheerful, "Today we cook nothing. Today we learn what the debt does when there is nothing to taste." The butcher looks at the barley sack and then at the door and says, without irony, "Then we will sing." You believe him, not because song feeds anyone, because song convinces hunger that you are still here to be bargained with, and because somewhere under the snow, the bells are already winding up their ropes. Snow swallows the village without hurry. Roofs vanish under white, fences blur, paths erase themselves. The world shrinks to a handful of huts, a lich gate shape on the hill, and the coffin inside its smoky chapel of walls. It sits smug, lid leaning, waiting for the next bargain. The holy man insists the day will hold without cooking. "Let the mouths rest," he says, though his eyes keep darting to the sack of barley as if wondering how much argument it contains. The butcher mutters that a coffin unused grows impatient. Nobody answers him. Everybody thinks he's right. Children are set to singing before breakfast, their thin voices lifted like flags into the rafters. The songs are mismatched, half carols, half work chants, half nonsense invented on the spot, but they weave into something sturdier than silence. You hum along. your chest vibrating like a cheap drum, and for a while you can almost believe the music thickens the air enough to make hunger stumble. The goat bleats off key, which earns a ripple of laughter that feels dangerously close to relief. The coffin does not creak, the lid does not twitch, but the sour thread, that alder tang, drifts stronger as the morning matures. It tastes sharper when you breathe, like biting pennies. You lick your lips to wash it away and find the taste waiting on your tongue, patient. The holy man notices too. He sprinkles ash in a small circle around the coffin, murmuring that circles persuade appetite to chase its own tail. It works for an hour. Then the bells begin again. They ring muffled, wrapped in snow, but each toll still vibrates the walls. The children falter, then raise their voices louder, a choir of defiance sharpened by fear. The butcher stamps a rhythm with his boot, as if to make the bells keep time with him instead of the other way around. You clap until your palms sting, desperate to believe in the power of noise. But bells are older than clapping. Bells are older than songs. Their tolls thread between the voices like a weaver adding black to a cheerful cloth. By midday, the air inside tastes too thick to ignore. Even without food, you feel full, stuffed with dread. The holy man calls a halt. He places his spent stairway candle on the hearth and declares it must climb once more even as a stub. He chants in syllables that crack like dry wood. The flame flickers, bends, rises. For a heartbeat you see steps ascending through smoke, narrow and crooked, vanishing upward into nothing. The villagers stare, wide-eyed, but no one dares to step. The vision vanishes, leaving only a burnt wick and a silence that feels scolded. Hunger sharpens as the day thins. Children whine. Adults grow brittle. You chew on a splinter, not for taste, but to trick your teeth into remembering function. Snow hammers the shutters like a guest denied entry. The coffin sits, lid calm, waiting. You wonder if it's listening to the same bells, or if the bells are its voice calling itself into fuller presence. When you close your eyes, you picture lifting the lid and finding not food, not shadow, but a mouth large enough to swallow your name whole. Evening sneaks in, carried by storm. The hut rocks with gusts, timbers groaning. The holy man orders more songs, but throats are too dry. The butcher says he'll tell a story instead. A good one, an old one. He begins. About a village not unlike this. A coffin not unlike this. A winter not unlike this. He spins words about bargains struck, bowls filled, debts rising like snowdrifts. His voice grows softer, his hands slower, until you realize he is not telling a story at all. He is confessing. Last year, he says, we fed it a calf, and the year before a thief, and once a child. The silence after that statement is thicker than stew. No one moves, no one breathes. The coffin creaks once, as if pleased by truth. The lid twitches, approving. The butcher covers his face with both hands, but the sound he makes is not crying. It is relief, raw and terrible, like a wound finally lanced. The villagers glare, but none deny. Deep down, everyone knew. Hunger like this does not take only barley. The bells swell, faster now, urgent. They rattle the roof beams, make bowls dance on shelves. You press your palms to your ears, but the tolling finds bone. The holy man shouts over the din, "We will not give names tonight, only voices." He orders everyone to sing, to scream, to howl if they must. Anything louder than silence. The room erupts in noise, discordant, desperate. Children wail. Adults chant. You scream until your throat tastes of rust. The goat joins, a ragged bleat that sounds like prayer. The noise fills every corner until it's no longer a room but a storm. And then, silence. Not because you stopped, because the bells did. They cut away, leaving your screams naked. One by one, voices falter, collapse. The hut sinks back into hush. The only sound is the crackle of fire and the faint sigh of snow against shutters. The coffin doesn't move. The lid doesn't lift. But in the ash at its foot, a new mark appears, wide and deep. The imprint of a bowl larger than any human hands could carry. A bowl the size of hunger itself. The holy man stares, lips moving with no sound. The butcher lowers his hands and whispers, "Tomorrow, it will want more than songs." You don't argue. You can't, because you already know what the bells were saying. Not hunger, not debt. They were counting down. Morning refuses to be gentle. It arrives as a bruise of light, swollen and purple behind the clouds. Snow lies thick on the ground, pressed flat in odd patterns, as though something enormous walked the village in the night and erased its own footprints after. When you step outside, the cold slaps you. Not the playful nip of winter, but the kind that feels deliberate, like punishment. Your breath smokes, slow and heavy, and for a second you think you hear bells in the exhale. You don't test the thought twice. You go back inside. The villagers move slower today, their eyes sunken, skin pale with the fatigue of feeding two hungers, their own and the Coffin's. Children sit huddled near the fire, clutching scraps of wood carved into pretend bowls. They pass them back and forth, pretending to ladle food, pretending the game is fun instead of rehearsal. The butcher sharpens his knife again, not for meat, but because the rasp of stone on steel gives him something to measure time with. The holy man stares into ashes, lips moving silently, reciting a prayer no one else is meant to overhear. And then there's the coffin. Always the coffin. It doesn't creak, doesn't twitch, doesn't breathe, but its silence presses harder than noise ever could. The lid leans casually against the wall, smug as a cat still waiting for milk. The sour tang of alder lingers in the air, stronger this morning, thick enough to taste with every breath. You swallow, but the taste follows down your throat, patient and unhurried. Breakfast is barley water, thin as lies. Everyone drinks quickly, as though speed might disguise emptiness. The children pretend to like it, smacking their lips theatrically, and the adults play along with nervous chuckles. Nobody mentions the mark left in the ash last night, the bowl too large to belong to any hand. It remains in the corner of every eye, heavy as an unpaid debt. By mid-morning, the holy man declares that the day cannot pass without tribute. Hunger, he says, is not patient. We must bargain, not wait. His voice trembles on bargain, the way a blade trembles when bent too far. The villagers mutter, restless. Some want to boil more barley, others whisper about slaughtering the goat, though the thought earns a quick protest from children. The butcher avoids everyone's gaze. You wonder if his confession about the calf and the thief and the child is still circling his mind like a carrion bird. You suspect it is. Snow hammers the shutters harder, a relentless percussion that makes the walls shiver. You glance toward the door and see shapes in the storm, not bodies, not exactly. More like hollows where bodies should be, walking outlines cut out of the white. They pass slowly, one after another, as though following a procession. You blink, and they're gone. But the bells begin almost immediately. Slow, heavy, impossible, 1, 2, 3. The holy man rises, clutching his stairway candle stub, though it's barely more than a smear of wax. We cannot give nothing, he says, or nothing will take us. He looks around the room, gaze lingering on every face, including yours. Then he gestures to the barley sack, its mouth drawn tight with rope. This and more. He points to the shelves where onions and dried roots wait. Everything. His meaning lands like a hammer. Tonight's offering will not be scraps. It will be all. The villagers grumble, but none argue. Arguing feels dangerous, like daring the bells to count faster. So, you all set to work. The barley is poured into the coffin, rattling like coins dropped into a bottomless purse. Onions follow, peeled until fingers sting, tossed in whole. Dried roots, carrots thin as fingers, herbs scraped from walls where they've been hanging brittle. Even the last of the salted apples. All of it swallowed by the coffin, layered and stacked until it looks like a parody of abundance. When the fire is lit beneath, the smell rises quickly, sharp and earthy, a stew heavy with memory. Steam rolls out in thick waves, clinging to the rafters until the hut feels like a throat too full of breath. People gather close, eyes wide, mouths watering despite themselves. Hunger is louder than dread. The butcher stirs with a branch, his hand shaking, sweat on his forehead despite the cold. The holy man circles the hearth, muttering prayers, tracing patterns in ash with his fingertips. As the stew thickens, the lid stirs, just a twitch, but enough to turn every head. You freeze, spoon halfway to your lips though you have nothing to eat. The lid doesn't lift, not yet. It just shifts a little farther from the wall, leaning as though curious. The sound it makes is small but sharp enough to pierce. The villagers fall silent. The stew bubbles louder, filling the void. Fat pops, onions soften, barley swells. The coffin breathes in steam and breathes out that sour tang, stronger now, stronger than ever. When the first ladle rises trembling, the bells stop. Dead stop. The silence is worse than the ringing. Every villager stares at the coffin as the holy man dips the branch and lifts a portion into a bowl. The stew drips slow, thick, steaming. He sets the bowl at the coffin's foot. No one touches it, no one speaks. The steam rises, curls, vanishes. The bowl empties without being lifted. Gone. Just gone. The villagers gasp as one. A second bowl is filled, set down, emptied in silence. A third, a fourth, each vanishing clean without hand or mouth. The coffin creaks softly with each one, like satisfaction whispered in wood. By the fifth bowl, people begin to murmur thanks, voices small, terrified, reverent. The holy man nods approval. The butcher bows his head. You clutch your arms around yourself, shivering despite the fire. When the offering is finished, the stew pot is nearly empty. The villagers share what remains in careful sips, each spoonful tasting of relief mixed with dread. The flavor is familiar now, earthy, smoky, sour, patient. Always that sour, always that reminder. You swallow and know you have eaten more than barley. You have eaten debt, you have eaten bargain. And you know tomorrow the coffin will want again. Snow stills outside, the wind hushes, the storm breaks as suddenly as it came. The sky clears to a brittle black, stars sharp as glass shards. The bells do not return, for tonight the bargain holds. But as you lie awake on your straw bed, staring at the ceiling, you hear the coffin groan softly, a sound too quiet for anyone else to notice. A sound not of hunger but of anticipation, because hunger is never full. Hunger only waits. The morning after the offering arrives quiet, but it is the kind of quiet that feels rehearsed. Snow has stopped, and the roofs gleam under a brittle crust of frost, sharp as shattered glass. Smoke curls from chimneys without conviction, thin threads lost in the wind. You step outside and the air slaps your lungs like ice water. For the first time in days, the bells do not sound. No tolls, no phantom chimes drifting from the tree line. Only silence stretched thin across the village like a net. At first, everyone takes it as a gift. The butcher laughs too loudly, stretching his back as though the weight has finally rolled off his shoulders. Children chase each other through the snow, their boots leaving erratic trails like scribbled runes. Even the goat wanders outside, snorting steam, pretending it has never sneezed a prophecy in its life. The holy man says nothing. His eyes stay fixed on the coffin inside the hut, where it sits swollen with yesterday's memory. He knows, as you know, that silence is never kindness. Silence is appetite holding its breath. Breakfast is a tragedy. The stew pot is scraped clean, licked bare, not a grain left to boil. A few onions remain, shriveled and soft as old teeth. Someone suggests roasting them, someone else suggests chewing leather straps. The children wrinkle their noses, and the adults avoid each other's eyes. Hunger gnaws sharper this morning, not just in the belly but in the chest, a nervous twitch that will not let go. Every breath tastes faintly of sour alder, though no one dares to mention it aloud. By noon, the cheer has rotted. The silence outside presses against the windows, against the walls, until it feels like the entire hut is floating in an ocean of nothing. People whisper, should they cook the goat? Should they crack open the last sack of barley, though it was meant for seed? Should they ask the coffin itself what it wants? The last suggestion lands with a thud no one wants to touch, but it remains there, heavy, unavoidable. You feel it waiting in the air, a question already answered. The butcher sharpens his cleaver again. His hands are steady now, too steady, the way a gambler's hands steady before the final throw. It will want meat, he says. His voice is flat, resigned. Not broth, not roots, meat. He doesn't have to add the rest, someone must bleed. You see it in every face, the same shadow passing through each expression. Someone clears their throat, someone else mutters about the goat again, but the holy man cuts them off with a sharp shake of his head. The goat is innocent, he says. It would not be enough. You try to speak, but your throat is sand. You want to suggest something else, anything else, but words won't come. Because deep down you know the coffin does not care about fairness, about innocence, about bargains, written in barley and onions. It cares only about hunger. Hunger wants what fills it best, and meat, living meat, is richer than stew. Afternoon crawls. No one eats. No one dares leave the hut, as though stepping outside would give the silence permission to follow. The coffin looms in the center, lid tilted, smug in its patience. The sour tang has grown thicker, cloying, sticking to the tongue like resin. You breathe shallow, trying not to taste it. The holy man sits cross-legged before the fire, eyes closed, lips moving in constant prayer. His stairway candle lies spent beside him. Nothing but a puddle of wax hardened into a useless shape. No ladders left to climb. The first bell comes just as dusk begins to bruise the horizon. A single toll, deep and hollow, rolling across the snow like thunder in slow motion. Everyone flinches. The children cry. The butcher grips his cleaver tighter. A second toll follows. Then a third, each one slower than the last, deliberate as a counting hand. The coffin creaks in answer, wood shifting as though waking from sleep. The lid leans forward an inch, then two, until it balances precariously, as if waiting for applause. The holy man rises, his face pale, his hands trembling. "It chooses," he whispers. His voice cracks on the word. You know instantly he isn't talking about the villagers choosing a sacrifice. He means the coffin chooses. The realization claws through the hut like a cold draft. The butcher's grip on the cleaver falters. The children are ushered behind their mothers. You press back against the wall, wishing you could sink through it and vanish into snow. The bells toll again. 1, 2, 3. Each strike is slower, heavier, like a hammer falling into a pit. The coffin groans, the lid trembling now, almost vibrating. The sour tang becomes unbearable, so thick it burns the back of your throat. And then, in a moment of impossible clarity, the lid lifts on its own. Not much, just a few inches, but enough. Enough to show the darkness inside. A darkness that is not the absence of light, but the presence of something else. Something waiting. The air rushes toward it, dragging your breath with it. The stew bowls, stacked neatly by the hearth, rattle and tip. One rolls across the floor and stops dead at the coffin's feet. The bells stop. Silence crashes down, louder than sound. The villagers stand frozen, every gaze locked on the coffin. The holy man sways, sweat streaming down his face, muttering words too fast to catch. The butcher drops his cleaver with a hollow thud. And your legs betray you. You step forward, as if pulled by a string tied to your ribs. The darkness inside the coffin is wide, patient, waiting. A whisper curls from it, not sound but taste. Sour, smoky, inevitable. You realize the coffin is not asking for food anymore. It is asking for someone. And before you can stop yourself, you know, tonight, the bowl it wants will be shaped exactly like you. Everyone watches you move, but no one calls your name. It feels like walking underwater, like the world has thickened into syrup, and your bones are the spoons. The coffin's darkness leans toward you, a tide with good manners. You think of the first night, of fish skin blistering, of beef bleeding perfume, of barley swelling like hope that learned arithmetic. All of it was a staircase to this step. The holy man whispers don't, or maybe do. The vowels fold in smoke. Your hand lifts anyway, palm open, as if begging the dark to read your lines. A child's ribbon catches your wrist. Red, frayed, stubborn. The girl's eyes say stay without making a sound. You manage a smile shaped like apology and promise nothing. The butcher stoops for his fallen cleaver and straightens with empty hands. He can't lift a tool against what feeds him. The lid quivers, pleased. Air slides past your lips and into the box as if the coffin has decided to breathe through you. You taste older again, but lower now where names live. The bells remain mercifully absent. That is how you know they are listening hardest. The holy man begins a litany of bargains, each one smaller than the last. A heel of bread, a ribbon, a wreath of onion peels, a year's worth of salt tears. His voice climbs and stumbles, then steadies on a narrow ledge of hope. He says the word mercy and the fire makes a sound like a page turning. You look into the dark and see nothing, which is worse than seeing something. Nothing is a mouth, nothing is a promise. Nothing is the shape left when a person has been measured. Snow shifts against the shutters, a slow animal rolling in its sleep. The goat coughs once, then settles with theatrical innocence. The villagers wait on their feet, because chairs feel like surrender. Someone whispers that the lich gate is lit, though no flame shows through the storm. Another swears they smell apples from a cellar long emptied. You keep walking. 3 steps, 4. The floor remembers every heel that carried offerings to this mouth. You reach the rim and lay your palm flat upon the wood. It is warm and it is not. Heat pours through your skin as if your hand were a wick. The sensation is strangely tender, like leaning close to someone reading your favorite book aloud. The lid gives a courteous tap, a question. The holy man nods, but you don't know whether he is nodding yes or nodding goodbye. You speak without planning to, a simple sentence built from winter and nerves. I will go if I must. The dark inhales. Behind you, cloth rustles, knives whisper back into sheaths. Someone's prayer falters. The goat mutters an opinion in lowercase, undecided, but the coffin does not want heroics, it wants arithmetic. It answers by showing you a vision not in sight, but in pressure. 4 bowls in ash, then 5, then a space the size of a person, then ash again. A ledger kept in heat. You withdraw your hand. The warmth lingers like a mark you cannot wipe off. The butcher steps forward, tears making unexpected paths through soot, and says he will go instead. The lid shifts toward you, not him. Choice is theatre. Hunger has already cast its favorite actor. The holy man breaks the moment with a strike of impertinence. He lifts his spent stairway of wax, no more than a warped spine, and holds it between you and the box. Climb, he orders. Not to you, to whatever waits, as if command alone could reverse gravity on death. The wick coughs a thread of flame. A smell of bees and old altars sharpens the air. For a heartbeat, steps appear again inside the smoke, crooked as a childhood path. You see small prints on them, then larger ones overlaying, as if learning. The lid settles a fraction, almost a bow. Relief skitters through the room on unreliable feet. You swallow it before it trips you. The butcher exhales like a lung was pardoned. Children peek. Someone laughs the laugh of a saved coward and hates themselves immediately for the joy. Then the bells return, not outside, but under the floor, tolling through the joists, rattling bowls, counting your bones. 1, 2, 3. Between each number is your heartbeat, arguing. The lid lifts again higher than before, and the dark edges light like teeth wet with breathed-on glass. You hear a voice then, finally, and it is your own from a hallway very far away. It says a simple word, wait. The word lands on the coffin and crawls there like a living caution. The dark pauses, tasting it. The holy man seizes the moment. He begins to name things that are not people. Stones, fences, eaves, ladders, buckets, offering their histories, their breaks and mendings, their winters endured. He speaks as if the village itself were meat, as if stories might fatten death. The lid hesitates, undecided, greedy for nouns. In that thin wedge of maybe, the goat does a foolish, holy thing. It steps between you and the coffin, lowers its head, and butts the rim with a dull, offended thunk. The sound is ridiculous enough to puncture the room's terror. People chuckle through tears. The bells falter, surprised into missing a beat. You seize the tear in the fabric and shove. Me later, you tell the dark. Not now. The lid eases down, a sullen compromise. The holy man slumps. The butcher sobs once. Outside, the snow begins again, very softly, like applause withheld. Night takes the hint and lowers itself over the village, careful not to jar the bargains stacked like bowls. You sit with the goat's flank against your knee and count the breaths it lends you. No bells, not yet. In the ash, prints appear. 6 neat ovals, waiting in a patient row, as if tomorrow already had a mouth. Morning uncurls like a reluctant fist. You wake to the goat snoring against your shin, and a taste in your mouth like burnt pennies and prayer. The fire is low, a red bruise breathing in the ash. Frost slicks the inside of the shutters where steam tried to escape and lost. The holy man is already up, hands black with yesterday's ash, whispering to it like a debtor flattering his ledger. The butcher sits with his coat on and his courage off, sharpening nothing, because there is nothing left to sharpen that matters. Outside, the world is new paper. Snow smothers the lane into silence, drifts humped like sleeping oxen. The lich gate is a black sketch on a white page, the hill behind it erased by sky. You step into the cold and the air steps into you, a polite trespasser with knives for fingers. For a breath you imagine walking up there, ring the gate with your knuckle just to see if sound still belongs to you. Then the hut door claps once in a gust, and you remember who keeps the bell rope. Back inside, the coffin waits in its usual position, lid tilted, the geometry of dare. In the ash beside it, 6 ovals still crisp from the night, little moons molded by invisible mouths. The sour thread has braided itself thicker, older and old milk and wet wood, the scent of a cellar where someone stored winter and forgot the lock. You swallow, and it follows you down. The goat opens one eye, judges you, closes it again, as if confident you'll make the exact wrong choice without supervision. Breakfast is ceremonial because it is imaginary. The villagers sit in a circle and pass an empty bowl and remember flavors on purpose. Apples, says the girl with the ribbon. Honey, says an old woman who has forgotten bees. Pepper, says the butcher, earning hoots like a comedian bombing in a coal mine. When the bowl reaches you, you say water, and it lands like a hymn. For a minute, the room is almost warm from different kinds of pretending. The holy man clears his throat and declares a plan modest enough to invite disaster. Today we will ration songs and chores, and we will not open the box. He says it with the conviction of a man who believes that if he arranges his verbs carefully, the nouns will behave. People nod because nodding is an affordable investment. He pockets what's left of the stairway candle out of habit. It leaves a smear of wax on his palm like a pale scar. Tasks are assigned the way blessings are, unevenly and with hope. You draw water. It fights you, icing at the lip as if the well is learning to grow teeth. Children sweep snow from the threshold into neat fans that melt into nothing, but the effort matters. The butcher carries wood and the wood carries memories. Every stick looks like a cross until it bursts into flame and decides to be useful. The coffin watches, which is to say it sits and your attention goes to it like iron to a quiet magnet. Mid-morning, the bells try a new trick. They ring soft, almost friendly, like a neighbor knocking with a pie. 3 notes, a pause, 3 notes again, the rhythm of a lullaby sung by someone who wants you to nap forever. The goat answers with a snort that translates to, "Do not even." The holy man begins a counter-melody under his breath, something stubborn and minor. He puts the empty stew pot on the hearth with theatrical intention, as if capacity itself were an offering. You decide to do the foolish, valuable thing. Leave the hut for the hill. Not far, not brave, just up to the lich gate and back, a reconnaissance of fear's architecture. The butcher hands you a length of rope like you're going to fish the sky. The girl ties her faded ribbon around your wrist because something red between you and the white feels like a spell with bones. The holy man does not forbid you. He only says, "If bells call your name, answer with a different one." Snow receives your steps with discreet little sighs. The village behind you looks like crumbs on a tablecloth. At the gate you stop, because the gate stops you. Not with a lock, but with a posture. It leans inward the way a mouth leans toward a spoon. The wood is black with old weather, the iron latch furred with frost. You reach out and your fingers stick, brief as a kiss. From here the world is a ring of white and a center of dark, a bowl turned upside down over a secret. You listen, wind trying on disguises, a crow arguing grammar with a branch. Deep under that, timed like a heart that has learned how to lie, bells but small like a set hidden inside a set. They are not calling, they are waiting. You stand ridiculous as a flag with no country until your toes stop volunteering to be part of you. When you turn, the village is nearer than it should be, as if the hill forgot to be a hill for your sake. That bothers you more than the ringing. Back in the hut, the air tastes of soft relief. People cheer in the way people do when somebody returns from outside the story intact. You announce you heard nothing useful, and everyone nods like that was the mission. The goat noses your palm for news, accepts none, and eats a strand of your fear with chewing satisfaction. The holy man marks your ribbon with a thumbprint of ash, blessing or accounting, who can tell. Afternoon is an argument the day loses. Light falters at the edges, surrendering without drama. The lid shivers once against the wall, a cat twitching in a dream. 6 ovals in ash become 7 without witnesses. No one sees it happen, everyone knows it did. The butcher, who swore off humor after his confession, tells a new joke anyway, about a traveler who asks directions from a scarecrow and ends up married to Winter. It dies decently. People thank the corpse with polite smiles. You realize the coffin is not merely hungry, it is curious. It is watching you all discover the rules it already knows. It is learning your faces the way smoke learns rafters. That thought makes your mouth dry in a new way. The holy man kneels and presses his ear to the wood. He holds there long enough to borrow a tune. When he rises, his eyes look farther than the room. It is counting to 12, he says, and it is not at 4. Evening slots itself into place like a lid fitted to a box. The fire behaves. The bells are courteous. Snow falls in a grammar you almost understand. No one cooks, no one offers. The hunger inside your ribs writes neat letters with a blunt pencil. The goat leans heavier against your calf. You imagine the coffin filled with nothing but heat, a kiln for turning names into ash. You imagine stepping inside and being fired into something delicate and sharp, a porcelain version of yourself that could shatter at a hymn. Night comes, a cloud lowered onto the world. The last thing you see before the shutters fall is the lich gate wearing its own shadow like a crown. Inside, the coffin does not move. It does not need to. The 7 bowls in ash glow faintly, phosphorus of the plausible. You lie down without sleeping and promise yourself you will not be the 8th. The bells keep their manners. The dark keeps the receipts. And somewhere between your last sensible thought and your first foolish dream, the lid whispers against the wall, a syllable long enough to translate as soon. The night is a tangle of shallow breaths and heavy silence. You drift, but you never fall fully into sleep. Instead, you balance on the thin edge between dream and waking, a knife that hums against your ribs. Every time your eyes close, you see the coffin lid twitching, slow and deliberate, as if counting out the rhythm of your heartbeat. And every time you jerk awake, you find the lid exactly where it was before, smug in its patience. The 7 ovals in the ash glow faintly, not with light, but with attention. They are watching you count yourself down. When morning finally shuffles in, grey and stiff, the villagers are pale shadows of themselves. No one has eaten. No one dares to suggest it. The goat paces in tight circles, hooves scuffing straw, as though it too understands the clock is winding towards something inevitable. The holy man stares into the hearth, lips moving with silent arithmetic. The butcher sits cross-legged on the floor, knife across his knees, as if waiting for a signal only he will recognize. Outside, the world has turned brittle. Snow crusts the ground like glass. Every step crunches too loud, the sound echoing against the silence as though someone else is following. The lich gate is barely visible through the haze, a black smear in a field of white, but you don't need to see it to know it's there. Its presence hums in your teeth. It is watching, the way the coffin watches, patient, endless, impossible to ignore. Breakfast is a performance. The holy man declares that each person must choose something, anything, to trick the hunger into believing it's been fed. Bark, straw, leather straps, whatever teeth can shred. Children chew and giggle nervously, pretending the fibers taste like roasted goose. Adults chew slower, pretending nothing at all. You place a strip of leather between your teeth and grind until your jaw aches. The taste is dust, old sweat, regret. But the act is enough. For a moment, it feels like victory. A lie swallowed so well it might become truth. Then the bells return. They come not from the hill, not from the trees, not even from the air. They rise from beneath the floor. A deep, subterranean tolling that rattles the planks, that shakes dust loose from the rafters. Each ring climbs into your bones and sits there, vibrating. The children drop their pretend food. The goat bleats and bucks against the wall. The butcher's knife slips from his hands and clatters against the boards, sharp as punctuation. The holy man stands, arms raised, voice cracking as he shouts over the noise. "Not yet! You are not ready!" But the coffin is ready. The lid shifts, slow at first, then faster, until it stands half open, yawning wide enough for the firelight to vanish inside. The darkness is not absence. It is substance. It pours out in waves, thick and cold, coating the air like oil. You gag on it. It tastes of alder, of rot, of smoke, of endings too old to name. And beneath it all, something sweet, something horribly inviting, like fruit left too long in the cellar, but still glowing with sugar. The villagers scatter back against the walls, pressed flat, their shadows quivering. The holy man shouts prayers, words tumbling over each other, but the sound barely dents the dark. The butcher crawls forward on his knees, head bowed, muttering, "Take me, take me, take me," over and over, as though repetition could bribe inevitability. His voice shakes, but his hands are steady as he spreads them open, palms upward. He is not asking for mercy. He is offering. The bells stop. The silence after is suffocating. The coffin lid freezes in place, half open, darkness spilling from it like smoke from a wound. The butcher's voice falters, then breaks into sobs. He slams his fists into the floor, begging, demanding, but nothing answers him. Nothing takes him. The coffin is not interested. It has already chosen. You feel it like a hand pressing against your chest, heavy, deliberate. The darkness isn't reaching for the butcher. It's reaching for you. Your breath shreds in your throat. You stumble backward, shaking your head, but the dark leans with you, following like a shadow pinned to your heels. The holy man shouts your name, or maybe it's not your name at all. Maybe it's the one the coffin has written for you, the one etched in alder smoke and sour breath. The villagers stare, wide-eyed, terrified, not of the coffin anymore, but of you, because you've been marked, because you are the eighth bowl. The goat charges, a blur of fur and stubborn courage. It slams into the coffin, horns cracking wood with a sound like thunder underwater. The lid crashes down, slamming shut with a finality that rattles every bone in the hut. The darkness collapses back inside, sucked into itself, gone in an instant. The room exhales. The bells are silent. The sour tang fades. Just a little. The goat staggers, legs trembling, and collapses against your feet. Its eyes roll, its sides heave, but it breathes. Alive. For now. The holy man rushes forward, hands on the lid, pressing it down, chanting until his voice shreds. The butcher crawls into a corner, rocking and muttering nonsense. The children cry, not from fear, but from the sound of their own hunger roaring louder than ever. And your palms burn. You glance down and see faint red marks etched across your skin, lines that don't belong to your lifelines. They are ovals, bowl-shaped, 7 of them, waiting for the 8th. You wash the red ovals from your palms with snow until your fingers go numb, but heat rises through the frost as if the marks have their own weather. The goat noses your wrist and refuses to leave your shadow. The holy man ties the lid with rope and nettle, then ties the rope to a peg sunk deep into the stone, then ties another knot over the first like a man trying to bind a dream. Nobody laughs. Even the children understand that knots can't hold hunger, only delay its mouth. Outside, the day drifts toward a color you don't have a name for. The lich gate is a dark parenthesis, holding in a white sentence that has forgotten its verb. The bells don't ring. That's worse. Silence copies itself, pastes itself to every surface, until even breathing feels like plagiarism. You make tea from pine needles and hope. It tastes like green memory and tin. You sip anyway, because ritual is a kind of bread. The goat tries to drink and sneezes in your cup. Somehow that helps. The butcher apologizes to the floor in a litany of sorries that leaves damp half-moons on the boards. He keeps repeating, "Take me," but the syllables have turned thin, like thread pulled too long. The holy man touches his shoulder, gentle, and says, "No single body ends a hunger made of numbers." He holds up the stump of his stairway candle as proof. Ladders burn down, steps vanish, and still you climb. His voice is soft, the softness of someone who knows softness is the only sharpness left. You pull the ribbon from your wrist and tie it to the peg that holds the rope that holds the lid, a small economy of faith. The girl grins, tired and fierce, then tugs your sleeve, guiding you to the hearth. In the ash, 7 ovals glow, and a faint 8th tries to bloom, the way a bruise considers its options. She presses her thumb into the almost and smears it out. "Not yet," she says, voice thin with authority. The ash accepts the edit with sullen grace. Afternoon chews through the village slowly. People pretend to do chores that have stopped applying to weather. Someone mends a net that hasn't seen fish in a year. Someone scrubs a pot with snow because shining something is a way to polish time. You stack wood not because the fire needs it, but because your hands need the argument. The goat supervises, deeply skeptical of your technique, stamping once when you misalign a log as if correcting punctuation. You notice gradually that the sour alder tang has retreated to the ceiling like a sulk. The lower air is almost honest. You breathe deeper, and storage sheds inside your chest crack open, dusty, but intact. The holy man notices too. He allows himself a smile that doesn't quite land. "It is waiting," he says. "Waiting counts as mercy when the calendar is short." You are not sure if he's right, but you let the sentence warm your hands. Twilight arrives with its usual talent for exaggeration. Everything taller than a chair becomes a possible guardian or thief. The lich gate is a cathedral and a trap. The rope on the coffin looks stronger and thinner at once. Children whisper stories into each other's hair so their ears will hold something friendlier than bells. The butcher oils his knife in motions learned before the winter learned his name. The goat lies down on your foot and pretends it's accidental. When the first toll comes, you already know where to look. The floor. The sound blooms up through the joists like a flower that eats light. 1, 2, 3. Each knocks ash into tiny avalanches around the ovals. The rope tightens by itself, fibers squeaking. The lid tries discretion and fails. You brace your palm on the wood without thinking, and heat climbs through your skin as if greeting a familiar at the door. The marks on your hands answer, bright and private. The holy man begins to sing. Not a hymn, not exactly. It's the kind of melody that lives under work and rises when mouths forget they're allowed to do other things. People join, ragged but determined. The butcher hums harmony that doesn't match and somehow helps. The girl with the ribbon taps spoons together on the offbeats, rescuing courage from the corners. Even the goat contributes, a breathy bassoon of protest. The lid fights the rope like a polite thief testing a window. Your palm holds. Your bones remember being branches and learn to be braces. The bells change time. They quicken, then slow, then space themselves like footsteps counting stairs. The holy man's song widens to protect as many names as it can carry. He doesn't sing yours, and that omission is the kindest line anyone draws tonight. You sing too because silence is an open door. The sour tang returns in a thin thread that pulls on the back of your tongue. You keep singing around it, you make vowels into ladders, you pretend sound can be woven thick enough to stop a mouth. The rope stretches, the peg leans, the lid lifts the width of a coin, then the width of a prayer. Dark fog licks the seam, curious and patient. It touches your wrist like a dog asking to be let in. You almost do. The goat stands, plants its hooves, and leans on your shin with insistence bordering on slander. The holy man shifts his song into a story about a village that survived by feeding winter their fear one spoon at a time until spring grew jealous. It's a lie told well. Lies told well can be bridges. Then the bells stop. The lid stops. The dark recoils like a tide discovering a cliff. For 3 heartbeats you think you won. Then the floor sighs, and the ash writes a sentence none of you remember authoring. 8 ovals, neat as soup bowls in a noble house, with a 9th just beginning. A ghost of a circle promising to be real by dawn. The room reads it and looks away. You are a mannequin of relief with hunger for stuffing. Night lays down fully. The rope holds. The lid sulks. The goat guards. The holy man sleeps with his hand on the peg. The butcher dreams aloud, asking forgiveness from strangers who answer with recipes. The girl curls by the hearth like punctuation that saves a paragraph. You sit awake and count your breaths in groups of 12, and somewhere between sets 3 and 4 you hear another sound beneath the floor. Not bells, not wood, not mice. Chewing. Slow, patient, careful chewing, like someone appreciating a long meal they intend to finish. You whisper to the dark without opening it. You tell it about summers it will never get, about butter on rye, about a river that forgives ankles, about songs your mother sang while burning the onions anyway, about the way people choose each other on purpose, even when they don't deserve it. Your voice goes hoarse and keeps going. The chewing pauses to listen. You talk until your throat is a dry road. When you stop, the chewing resumes, softer, almost polite. Dawn will come. You know it with a certainty that feels like a bruise finding its color. It will bring numbers, because that is what dawns do here. 8 will harden. 9 will begin. The rope will be a suggestion. The lid will have excellent reasons. The goat will make a case. The holy man will relearn every prayer and then improvise new ones with the desperate style of a man building bridges from smoke. The butcher will offer again and be refused with gratitude. And you will keep your hands ready, palms mapped with bowls that are not yours and might be, because the only arithmetic you can afford is refusal paid in songs. You pour pine tea over your marks and watch steam rise like a shy promise. Beneath the floor, the chewing ends. The bells rest. Your breath stacks neatly in the cold, a pile of small absolutions. The lid is quiet. The ovals wait. The goat leans more weight onto your ankle and pretends it's for your comfort. You let it. Sometimes pretending is the only door that opens the right way. Morning drags itself across the horizon like a wounded animal. The snow is still falling, but not the playful kind, thick, heavy flakes that land with the weight of a threat. You push open the hut door and the world outside looks scrubbed clean of detail, like a page wiped too many times. The lichgate is gone behind the curtain of white, but you know it hasn't moved. It never moves. It's just waiting to be revealed again, like a villain pausing for dramatic effect. Inside, the coffin has not shifted, but the rope tied across its lid sags, stretched as if it spent the night arguing with something that leaned back. The ash around the hearth has settled into neat geometry, 8 bowls now, crisp as fingerprints, and beside them, the faint start of a 9th. Nobody points at it. Nobody needs to. The room is already crowded with the weight of its presence. The holy man wakes last, eyes red, voice hoarse from chanting until sleep finally bullied him. He examines the rope with a nod that says, "Not bad, but not enough." He declares this day will be for fasting. We will not give it more. We will not, he insists, though his lips tremble around the repetition. The villagers nod, some eager, some weary, all pretending that hunger feels noble when it mostly feels like knives. The butcher mutters that even knives get dull if you use them on the wrong things. He sharpens his blade again, more for the rhythm than the edge. The goat follows you like a shadow, stubborn and suspicious, as though it has decided you're too foolish to be left unsupervised. The girl with the ribbon hums a tune while sweeping, her voice cracked but steady, like a lantern left on just to remind the dark it doesn't own everything yet. Hunger prowls the hut like a stray dog. Stomachs growl, lips crack, hands fidget with anything they can chew, sticks, cloth, teeth. You chew a strip of bark until your jaw aches, but the taste is only dust and bitterness. The holy man catches you and shakes his head. "Don't feed on wood," he whispers. The coffin listens. You spit the bark into the fire and it hisses, an insult too small to matter. By midday, the silence outside grows unbearable. Snow presses against the walls like a weight, the storm steady and slow, as if winter has infinite patience. You decide to check the drifts, to dig out the path, anything to escape the stifling air inside. The butcher insists on coming. The goat follows too, because apparently you're incapable of going anywhere alone now. Together you push through the door into a world muffled by white. The air bites like glass, snow blinds, thick flakes stinging your face. The world has no edges, only blur. You dig at the path with a stick, but it feels like trying to carve your name into a river. The butcher leans on his shovel, breath steaming, muttering curses at the sky. The goat bleats once and freezes. You look up, and there, just beyond the veil of snow, is a figure. At first you think it's a villager, broad-shouldered, cloaked, standing still. You wave, but it doesn't wave back. The butcher mutters, "No tracks," and he's right. The snow is untouched between you. The figure stands on nothing, on absence, on air. Then the bells begin, not loud, not far, but close. Right there with the figure. Each toll shakes the flakes around it into a trembling halo. 1, 2, 3. You stumble back, dragging the butcher with you. The goat charges the air, horns lowered, bleating fury. The figure does not move, does not bend. The bells toll again. When the snow gusts sideways for a breath, the figure is gone. But the sound remains, vibrating in your chest, in the marrow of your teeth. You flee back to the hut, slamming the door, snow still clinging to your lashes. Inside, everyone stares. They heard it too. The holy man bows his head. "It is counting aloud now," he says. His voice has the finality of a gravestone. The villagers murmur, restless, frightened. The girl whispers, "8 already." Her ribbon is frayed to threads, but she ties it tighter. The goat presses against your knees, breath hot, insistent. The butcher drops his shovel with a clatter, muttering about debts that never stop growing. Evening crawls in heavy, thick with storm. The fire is weak, wood scarce. The coffin sulks in silence, but the ash bowls glow faintly. The 8th bright, the 9th forming with cruel precision. You sit with your back against the wall, palms burning where the marks remain, red and undeniable. The holy man kneels at the hearth and presses his ear to the lid. His face drains of color. He rises, shaking, and says, "It is not asking for food anymore. It is asking for names." The butcher swears. The girl gasps. The goat snorts like it knew all along. You close your eyes. The sour alder tastes thick in your mouth, and you hear it too. Your name, spoken in the hollow inside the coffin. Whispered not with sound, but with flavor. Sweet, sour, inevitable. You open your eyes and the lid has shifted again. Only an inch, only enough to let the dark smile. Names gather in the room the way smoke does. Quiet, adhesive. determined to belong to your lungs. You feel yours humming behind your teeth, trying to step forward even as you bite down. The holy man hears it too. He raises a hand for hush and says, "If it asks for names, we give them the wrong ones." A murmur passes like wind over winter wheat. False names, borrowed names. Names with knots in them so a mouth can't swallow without choking. You want to believe trickery counts as piety, when survival is the prayer. The butcher says he'll answer to ox, and only ox, until spring. The girl with the ribbon chooses coal, grinning as if soot could adopt her. The goat, consulted solemnly, becomes captain, which makes it stand taller in a way that should not impress you and absolutely does. Someone christens the empty stew pot bell, as if renaming the enemy's teeth might dull them. You pick a name you haven't tasted since childhood. Rowan, red wood, fire that doesn't break. You practice, all of you, calling each other into the room you hope the coffin can hear. Ox, pass the pail. Cole, stir the embers. Captain, mind the door. Bell, don't roll away. Rowan, count to 12 and stop. The words pile up into a small architecture of bravado. The lid shifts and listens. The ash ovals hold their breath. For several minutes nothing happens, which is better than everything happening. Then the bells knock 3 times beneath the floorboards, polite as a landlord. The dark inside the coffin tests the rope and tastes the new names like a curious tongue sampling market fruit. A breeze without a source ghost fingers the hair at your neck. From the tree line, muffled by the white, answers come back. Ox, Cole, Captain, Bell, Rowan. Perfect mimicry, but wrong in the corners. Tones a fraction low, vowels the color of alder smoke. The holy man flinches. The trick has worked well enough to be noticed. Louder, he says, voice thin and urgent. Make the room agree. You call and respond until your throat is a scraped bowl. Ox answers. Cole laughs. Captain sneezes a captain's sneeze. Bell clinks itself against the hearthstone. Rowan holds. Your heart finds the meter and hammers obedience into the beats. The bells hesitate, missing a step on a staircase they thought they owned. For the first time since the lid learned your breath, you feel the dark's patience waver. It retaliates with sweetness. The air sours as before, then tilts toward apple and clove, the exact lie Christmas tells to make a mouth open. Your stomach remembers festivals your bones never attended. Saliva arrives like treason. Around you, people sway, not from fear this time, but from yearning. The coffin breathes that sugar deeper, seasoning the hunger until it answers like a trained hound. You whisper, Rowan, again, not to the room, but to yourself. Like a nail you hammer back into a plank that has begun to lift. The holy man changes tactics. He scatters salt in a spiral toward the door, muttering numbers that courage can count. We walk, he orders. We walk sunwise with our new names, and we leave a path that is not a throat. The spiral crunches underfoot as the village forms a slow procession. Ox and Cole, Captain and Bell, you as Rowan, old women named Thorn and Flint for the hour, boys answering to lantern and rope. Even the starved dog wakes to be dubbed Bread, and follows, tail arguing hope. Round and round, sunwise, while the storm rehearses extinction outside. Your feet memorize the circle until it becomes a song the body sings without permission. The lid rocks once, twice, then rests, soothed or plotting. The bells under the floor fall out of time, miscounts start again. Every 12 steps the holy man nods approval, and approval tonight is better than soup. It's working, someone breathes. You do not look to see who. Looking is how spells leak. On the 6th circuit, the ash writes. You feel it before you see it, a hush threaded with intention. 8 bowls deepen as if pressed by invisible thumbs. The 9th completes itself, clean and inevitable. Beside it, a 10th starts, faint as a rumor. The room stumbles. Captain stomps a hoof, furious at arithmetic. Bread growls with dignity that surprises everyone. Ox grips his knife as though a handle could argue with math. Keep walking, the holy man commands, because verbs are the only tools he has left. You do. You pass the coffin again and again until your shadow forgets which direction is yours. Somewhere between the 9th and 10th lap, the lich gate reveals itself through a seam in the snow, black on white. A punctuation mark insisting the sentence continue. The bells try to ride your pulse and fail, sliding off like hands from an oiled rung. You almost smile. Almost. The dark learns your smile and punishes it. The rope tightens without moving. The lid lifts a finger's width, a fingernail's width more, testing the knot, like a question asked in a voice that already knows your answer. Sweetness thickens to syrup. Your knees want to kneel. Cole stumbles and you catch her, and her ribbon snaps in your fist like a small red oath breaking. The sound is loud enough to make the goat swear in fluent Captain. "Rowan," the dark whispers, correctly this time. Not from the tree line, not from the floor, but from inside your mouth, borrowing your breath on the way out. The circle shreds. People stop. The holy man's salt spiral looks suddenly like a snare. For a heartbeat you understand the path you've worn is also a groove, and grooves are how wheels carry cargo. You answer yourself with discipline. "Rowan," you say first. Then you stack names on top of it like planks on ice. Rowan, lantern, rope, thorn, flint, captain, bread, bell. You point as you speak so sound has somewhere to land. Eyes blink awake. Feet remember forward. The circle repairs. The bells flinch, then sulk, then toll once the way a door knocks when it knows it owns the hinges. But they are outside the rhythm now. You put them there. Hold them there. Hold. Night elbows in. The kind with edges. The holy man drops to his knees and presses his cheek to the floor as if listening for trains that never will be invented. "It will ask again at midnight," he says. "It will ask better." He looks at you with the helpless gratitude of a man watching a thin wall keep out a patient sea. When it does, do not speak first. You nod. Your tongue curls like a sleeping animal and promises nothing. You keep moving until your legs argue rebellion. When the circle ends, it ends because the fire needs wood, and voices need water, and the goat needs to remind the coffin that the living possess horns. The lid rests. The rope pretends to own it. The ash bowls gleam like coins you will never spend. You sit, finally, and the holy man gives you a handful of snow and calls it medicine. It stings your palm, melts along the red ovals that mark you for arithmetic, and tastes like a yes you can hold. Midnight arrives with no ceremony but exactness. The bells do not precede it. The bells are it. One note only, drawn out until time forgets about seconds and learns about decisions. The lid breathes. The dark leans. Your name wakes in your throat, ready to betray you with perfect diction. You press your tongue to the roof of your mouth and think of other things. Of summers, of butter, of rivers forgiving ankles, of apples that rot politely. You think of captain and bread and coal and ox. You think of a boy once called Rowan who learned to be a tree and a fire both. The dark waits. It is very good at waiting. The room holds its breath until face is blue. Your pulse writes furious letters you refuse to mail. When the note finally releases, the silence it leaves behind is a cliff. You do not fall, not yet. The lid settles the smallest imaginable distance. In the ash, the 10th oval brightens a fraction, an appointment penciled in. Morning will come to ink it. For now the goat headbutts your knee with the authority of a captain who has decided the ship still floats. You exhale a word that isn't a name. No. It arrives small and stubborn and enough. The dark listens. The bells reconsider their ropes, somewhere under the floor chewing resumes, less hungry than before, or only more polite. You lie down without sleep and practice owning the name you borrowed. Rowan, you tell the ceiling. Rowan, you tell the storm. Rowan, you promise the lid you will not say again when it is the one asking. Dawn limps into the hut with a grey face, the kind of light that apologizes for existing. Nobody greets it. Everyone sits in the remains of the night, jaws tight, stomachs hollow, waiting to see what the ash decided while they pretended to rest. And there it is, 10 ovals, crisp as coins. The 9th has hardened. The 10th is no longer a sketch. It gleams faintly, fresh, undeniable. The villagers don't speak. They don't have to. The silence already says it. The coffin is keeping score. The holy man rubs salt between his fingers, as if grinding bones to dust. He mutters that today must be for refusal, but his eyes avoid the ash. The butcher shakes his head, voice flat. Refusal doesn't make hunger stop. It makes it ask louder. His knife lies across his knees, heavy as a verdict. The girl with the ribbon, what's left of it tied in a stub at her wrist, insists she can draw more circles in the ash, confuse the count, make 11 bowls look like 12. Hope, spoken aloud, is almost obscene. But the goat stamps once, and for a moment, absurdly, the idea doesn't feel impossible. You press your palms together and feel the marks burn against each other. 10 ovals, 10 promises. Your skin carries the same arithmetic as the floor. It is not a coincidence, it never was. The coffin is reading you like a ledger and the ink is red. Outside, the storm has swallowed the village whole. Snow drifts against doors, against roofs, pressing so heavy you can hear the timbers bow. The lich gate is hidden again, but its absence is more visible than its presence ever was. You step into the yard, boots crunching, the air thick with flakes, and you feel it. The bells, not ringing but waiting, strung taut in the silence, ready to toll as soon as you give them an excuse. Back inside, the holy man lights what's left of a stub candle, ordinary wax, no carved steps, and sets it on the coffin's lid, as if daring the dark to blow it out. The flame wobbles, catches, steadies. He nods at you. If it calls, do not answer. If it offers, do not take. If it counts, miscount. He says it like instructions for a child's game, though the stakes are knives against throats. The butcher stirs an imaginary pot. He mutters recipes to himself, naming meats that don't exist anymore, goose, lamb, venison. His lips wet themselves with hunger. The holy man slaps the knife from his knees, furious. Do not name it, he hisses. Names feed it faster. The butcher snarls but says nothing. Everyone sees the truth anyway. Sooner or later someone will bleed. The bells toll at noon. Not from the floor, not from the tree line, not even from the hill. This time they toll from inside your chest. 1, 2, 3. Each strike knocks your heart sideways. You clutch your ribs, but the sound doesn't weaken. It grows, resonant, vibrating the walls, the windows, the air itself. The villagers fall to their knees, covering their ears. The goat wails like a dying horn. The holy man shouts your borrowed name, Rowan, 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 but the bells don't care. They know the other one. They toll it with precision. The lid lifts, rope creaks, fibers fray, the peg bends. Darkness breathes out, rolling over the room like smoke too heavy to rise. It doesn't lunge. It doesn't roar. It only waits, a mouth opened in expectation. The ovals in the ash flare, the 10th burning brightest, the 11th sketching itself in delicate lines. Your palms sear, the marks throb. You feel yourself leaning forward, body betraying you, throat ready to give the name it wants. The goat saves you again. It rams your knee so hard you collapse sideways, choking back the word that was about to slip free. The holy man flings salt across the seam of the lid, his voice a ragged chant. The darkness recoils an inch, not defeated, only inconvenienced. The rope groans, threads snapping, but holds, for now. The butcher lunges then, knife in hand, eyes wet, mouth foaming with desperation. "Take me," he screams. "Take me and stop this." He slams the blade against his own palm, blood spattering the ash. The bowls brighten, the ovals drink deep, but the coffin does not open wider. The darkness leans away from him, not toward. He isn't what it wants. He was never what it wanted. The butcher drops the knife and sobs, hollow, empty even of use. The holy man turns to you, face streaked with sweat and ash. "It's not after blood," he whispers. "It's after weight. It's after names that stay." His gaze drops to your burning hands. "It's after you." The words land like stones. You know he's right. Every sign has pointed here. The palm marks, the whispers, the bowls forming in ash. You are the account it is balancing, the number it is circling. The coffin isn't hungry. It's patient. It's waiting for you to give yourself willingly. The bells toll again, once, heavy enough to shake the floor. The lid quivers. The darkness exhales, sweet with rot, warm with invitation. You close your eyes. You think of every borrowed name, Rowan, Cole, Captain, Bell, and you say them inside your head like shields. You think of butter melting on rye, of rivers forgiving ankles, of a goat that refuses to stop saving you. You do not give your name. You press your burning palms against your chest, and you keep it. The bells fall silent. The lid closes a fraction. The darkness slinks back into itself, murmuring disappointment. The ash remains bright, but the 11th oval does not finish. It stays a ghost of a circle, waiting. Tomorrow, you think. Tomorrow it will return. Tomorrow it will count again. But tonight, you are still here. The rope still holds. The goat still breathes. The holy man still chants, and you still own your name, though only barely. The storm loosens its jaw. Wind backs away from the shutters with the sulky dignity of a scolded dog. You stand, every muscle tasting like rust, and listen to the village remember how to creak in ordinary ways again. The holy man snores for the first time in days, a ragged little saw cutting through silence. The butcher dreams with his mouth open, whispering recipes at ghosts who take notes. The goat noses your sleeve, checks that your name is still attached, and pretends it never worried. Morning is a pale bruise on the horizon when you unlatch the door. Snow has slumped, softening into dunes. Somewhere beneath the white, fences negotiate their return to being fences. The lich gate emerges like a thought you'd rather not have, black ink bleeding through a page. You taste the air for bells. Nothing, only cold. A clean knife that knows where your lungs live. Your palms itch where the red ovals slept. When you flex your fingers, heat answers like a reminder that debts enjoy alarms. Inside, the ash speaks before anyone does. 10 bowls stay bright as cautions. Beside them, the sketch of the 11th waits sly as a rumor that knows it will be true by lunch. Nobody points. The holy man wakes, rubs salt into his palms and says, "We fetch alder." His voice is the crumbling edge of a cliff. He means it like a spell and a surrender. Alder smoke has been seasoning this nightmare since the first goose met its coffin. If you change the wood, do you change the hunger, or only its perfume? You go because standing still lets fear lay eggs. The butcher shoulders a sled. The girl with the ribbon knits her fingers together and declares herself a rope. Captain follows because mutiny is an indoor sport. You cross the lane into the trees, and the world edits itself down to 3 colors: white, black, and that soft, poisonous green alder keeps in its heart like gossip. The smell arrives before the branches, wet sweetness with a bite underneath, the exact scent you've been swallowing in every meal flavored by debt. Axes make sense in a way nothing else has lately. They swing, they answer, they split. Chips fly sharp as syllables. Sap bleeds with a tiny, shocked cry that feels wrongly intimate. You stack branches, your breath writing paragraphs in the air. The butcher pauses, palm on a trunk, forehead leaning to wood as if listening for a pulse. "We cooked in coffins," he says suddenly. "Not to you, to the tree. Because there were no pots. Because iron costs more than winters." He laughs once, a thin, serrated sound. "Because the dead don't mind being useful." The girl asks if the dead minded. He says, very quietly, "Some did." The axes keep speaking. Across the river of snow, you spy ancient stumps scalloped by time, a shiver of history hiding in plain sight. Years of alder culled to feed a mouth that never stops being a mouth. You imagine the first time someone laid a plank box across stones and said, "Why not?" You can almost hear the slap of fat, the hiss, the relief like sin forgiven by appetite. A tradition begins exactly where hunger acquires a tool. Captain tests a fallen limb with his horns, declares it tolerable and claims credit for the harvest. You lash the load and drag it back, sled whispering jokes nobody asked to hear. The village watches your return the way castaways watch a cloud decide whether to rain. The holy man blesses the stack with a thumbprint of ash, then looks at you, eyes bright in a way that frightens you more than bells. "We change the fuel," he says. "We change the breath." He points at the lid. "Today it will breathe linden." You spend an hour swapping stacks, burying alder under snow, hauling linden from a shed that smells like bees lost their maps. Linden smoke is thin and gentle, the tea of woods. When the first ribbon of it licks the rafters, the sour taste in the room loosens a notch. People notice. Spines uncoil by small degrees. The ash ovals dim half a shade, or maybe you're begging them to. The holy man smiles like a man who taught the weather a minor politeness. "We will roast nothing," he says. "We will boil nothing. We will burn what refuses bitterness." Quiet work fills the hourglass. You sweep, mend, pretend hunger is a chore you can fold and put away. The butcher sharpens the blade he will not be allowed to use on anyone but wood. Captain naps with one eye open because professionalism. The girl hums an argument with fate and loses tunefully. You brew linden twigs into a golden water that tastes like kindness surviving winter. For a moment, your tongue forgets the coffin ever owned it. Then the bells test the air. Not 3, but 1. Long patient, the note a teacher uses when the class pretends not to hear. The lid stirs. Rope whispers. The new smoke twines with old hunger like a lover's quarrel in a tight bed. You set cups of linden tea on the hearth in a neat row and call their steam names you choose on purpose. Relief, refusal, river, Rowan. Captain tries to drink from the cup labeled Captain and scalds his lip, offended by consequences. You don't cook. The coffin doesn't care. It adjusts the contract. The 11th bowl in ash completes itself with an elegance that feels like a signature. The holy man doesn't flinch. He sprinkles salt around the ovals in a clumsy halo and says, "It can count. So can we." He draws marks of his own, little crosses between bowls. Nonsense math meant to trip a hungry god. You know the trick will fail. You appreciate it anyway. Sometimes failure is how courage keeps busy. Afternoon chills toward the blue hour, that bruised window when shadows take attendance. You decide to climb to the lich gate because the part of you that imagines control needs exercise. The holy man lets you go with a nod, shaped like a leash. The girl ties her ribbon to your wrist again, a small red instruction to return. Captain follows to make sure you don't garnish your fate with stupidity. The hill chews your calves and gives nothing back. Snow hushes your breath into paler versions of itself. At the gate you stop, not because it bars you, but because your skin recognizes its job description. Threshold, throat, hinge. Frost, furred on iron, tastes like coins when you touch it with your tongue. You absolutely should not have done that. You absolutely did. You close your eyes and listen. Far away, the world invents Thor. Nearer, the bells sit in their ropes, polite, composed, confident. Beneath them, a softer sound like someone testing teeth with a fingertip. Something shifts in the snow beside you without moving. An outline becomes a tension. A figure unfolds from whiteness with the patience of a stain. No tracks under it, only agreement. You do not run because every story you've ever believed insists running teaches certain mouths how fast to open. It tilts where a head might be. Captain stamps, squares himself, and offers to fight gravity on your behalf. You say very clearly, the wrong name for you and the right name for courage. Rowan, you introduce, and that is true and not true enough to save you. The figure inclines, or the snow does around it. Then the bells toll, once not at the gate, but through your teeth. The note tasting of linden and alder and the secret sweetness you hate for how much you want it. Behind your ribs, your real name tries to stand. You lean into Captain's shoulder, into his goat heat, an unglamorous anchor that works. "No," you tell the air. The figure becomes snow again, not leaving, only choosing to be patient someplace you can't point at. By the time you descend, the sky has blued into ink. Inside, linden smoke has papered the ceiling with a gentler dark. People look less like prey and more like problems. The holy man taps the lid with the back of his knuckles. "We changed the breath," he says, pride small and shining. The coffin answers with a creak, like a laugh that learned manners. Then the ash writes another sentence. 11 bowls glow. The beginnings of a 12th blink in and out like a star indecisive about clouds. The butcher sags. The girl squeezes your fingers until bones reconsider their loyalties. Captain takes his place between you and the lid without ceremony. The holy man lifts a plain candle, not carved, not holy, and sets it on the coffin's lip. "We will not feed," he says. "We will talk." So you do. You tell the room everything that ever tried to feed you and failed. Summers full of thin soup, autumns sprained by frost, neighbors who promised bread and remembered death instead. You tell it about the first coffin that became a pan, about the laugh that followed the first bite, about how laughter can sound exactly like surrender if you hold it too long. The villagers take turns. Names remain locked behind teeth. Stories pour out like broth that forgot meat. The lid listens. The bells wait. Linden thins the sour until your tongue tastes almost honest. Night climbs onto the roof and knocks gently. The holy man says you will not open, and the room agrees as well as rooms can. You lie down with Captain's breath fogging your sleeve and your palms glowing faintly against your chest. You are not safe. You are not chosen. You are a number learning to be a person louder than its count. Behind the hearth, quiet as moss, the 12 begins to draw itself. The fire dies at its own pace, and the night leans harder against the shutters. You keep your eyes closed and your ears wide, because silence has teeth now. Somewhere in the rafters, frost cracks like joints flexing. Beside you, Captain snores a goat's snore, half whistle, half wheeze, entirely stubborn. The holy man mutters even in sleep. prayers braided into dreams, words looping back on themselves until they sound like rope fraying. You drift in and out, but each time you surface, the ash bowls glow a little brighter. 11 steady, 12th scribbling itself toward completion. The dark is patient. The dark is arithmetic. Morning arrives as a rumor before it remembers to be light. The lich gate outside cuts through the thinning snow like a jawbone. The villagers wake in jerks, startled by hunger, haunted by memory. No one mentions food anymore. Food is a fable. They drink melted snow and call it breakfast, pretending it fills the gaps. The butcher gnaws his knuckles until they bleed, eyes glazed, lips shaping recipes he doesn't speak aloud. The girl ties what remains of her ribbon around Captain's horn, whispering that it means he's braver than any of them. Captain sneezes approval. The holy man gathers everyone in a circle and declares today a day for words, not offerings. We will drown it in our voices, he says. It will choke on our stories. His eyes flick to you, linger, then slide away. He knows. You know. The coffin isn't choking on anything. It is chewing slowly, savoring, saving room. Still, you speak when it's your turn, because silence is worse. You tell of summers you never had, of meadows that probably don't exist, of apples that rot politely in cellars. The girl follows, weaving a tale of a wolf that swallowed bells and burped up thunder. Even the butcher contributes, muttering about sausages so rich they dripped gold. Words fill the hut like smoke. The coffin creaks once, appreciative, as if taste-testing syllables. Midday the bells begin again, not loud, not fast, but sly. They toll under the floorboards, each note curling upward like steam. 1, 2, 3. The air thickens with the sweetness you dread, cloying, syrupy. The perfume of an orchard left too long unharvested. Your stomach clenches, not from hunger, but from longing. That sweetness is designed to hurt. It tastes like something you never had but always believed you deserved. Around you, villagers lick their lips in unison, a choir of betrayal. The girl cries because she can't stop breathing it in. Captain stamps, furious, trying to clear the air with his own lungs. The holy man lights another plain candle and sets it at the coffin's lip. The flame flickers violently, bending toward the seam of the lid. Rope creaks. The peg trembles. Ash stirs. And then, quietly, almost tenderly, the lid lifts a fraction, no more than the width of a breath. Darkness seeps out, not rushing, not grabbing, just waiting, the way a mouth waits for a spoon. The sweetness intensifies until you're dizzy, until the floor tilts under your knees. Speak, the holy man commands. Drown it. The villagers obey, voices crashing into the dark. They tell stories, they chant lies, they sing broken carols. You shout your borrowed name, Rowan, until your throat frays. The lid pauses. The sweetness curdles, sour notes seeping back in. For a moment you think it's working. For a moment you think voices can out-eat hunger, but the ash betrays you. The 12th oval finishes itself in the hearth, bright and perfect. The villagers freeze mid-word, mid-song, mid-lie. Their silence tastes like surrender. The lid creaks wider, enough for the darkness to spill out like ink dropped into water. It rolls toward you, deliberate, affectionate. Your palms blaze. The ovals etched in your skin glow red, pulsing in rhythm with the ash. 10, 11, 12. The count is complete. The coffin has reached its number. Captain charges, horns slam the lid, snapping the rope, toppling the candle. Wax spills like blood. The flame gutters out. Darkness recoils, not beaten but annoyed. The goat bleats, hooves striking sparks on the stone. Villagers shout, cheer, weep. For one wild heartbeat, you believe Captain has won. But then the bells return, deafening, relentless, hammering the air. 1, 2, 3, 4, not stopping at 12, climbing, counting past what was promised, numbers stretching toward a place you cannot follow. The holy man falls to his knees, hands pressed against his ears, screaming prayers that dissolve into noise. The butcher claws at the ash, smearing the bowls, trying to undo the count. It doesn't matter. The numbers have escaped the floor. They live in the air now, in your bones, in your burning palms. You double over, gasping, as each toll rattles through you like iron dropped down a well. Your real name thrashes inside you, demanding release. Rowan isn't enough anymore. Nothing is enough anymore. The lid yawns open wider, the rope dangling useless, the peg splintered. Darkness pours out, thick, endless, sweet and sour at once. It doesn't rush, it strolls, it doesn't devour, it selects. It leans towards you with the patience of a predator who has already won. Your hands flare, the red ovals blazing like fresh wounds. The bells toll 13, 13. The number hangs in the air, impossible, obscene, but undeniable. The villagers collapse in shock. The holy man stares, eyes wide, lips trembling. "It has broken the year," he whispers. His voice is small, terrified. "It has broken time." Captain bleats, furious, stamping and butting against the dark, but even his horns pass through it like mist. The girl clutches her ribbon and sobs. The butcher whispers, "Take him, please take him." But the coffin ignores him. It isn't looking at anyone else, only you. The bells toll again. 14. 14 lands like a stone in your throat. The number shouldn't exist here. The year only has 12 places to kneel. Yet the bells keep dragging the floorboards further from the walls, like a table being lengthened to seat a guest nobody invited. The darkness leans closer, tasting your cheek with a breeze that smells like linden turned sour, alder remembering itself, and apples that learn to speak. Captain lowers his head again, but the dark is an arithmetic proof now, and horns aren't knives for that kind of problem. The holy man staggers upright, ash smeared, eyes bright with a decision he hates. "Out," he says, voice thin and iron. We take it to the gate. The villagers stare because moving the coffin is like moving a horizon. It explains nothing and changes everything. The butcher croaks, "In this storm?" But the door flies open before argument grows shoes. Snow strafes the room, a legion of cold mouths. 13 becomes 14 again just to prove it can. The lid lifts higher, rope limp, peg split. The box wants legs and has chosen yours. You nod without meaning to, and Captain snorts as if signing a witness line. The holy man scrapes a circle of salt around the ash bowls, then drags a path to the threshold, crude stare drawn flat. "If it broke the year," he says, "we walk it back to the hinge." His hand shakes as he smears more salt across his brow. He thrusts a plain candle into your fist, the stub greasy with old prayers. "Hold this where your name lives." You press the candle to your chest, and for one beat the flame steadies. The red ovals on your palms answer with a heat that feels like being counted and refusing to answer roll call. The coffin is heavier than wood, heavier than grief. It is the mass of a promise kept too long. 6 hands, then 10, then every hand you lift. The lid breathes. The dark drools sweetness and old cellar. Captain wedges his shoulder beneath a corner like a boast. The girl with the ribbon ties what's left of red around the rope, a laughably bright tourniquet. The butcher murmurs apologies to anyone he ever named for supper. The bells toll 15, a number that sounds like a step off a staircase into a room that isn't ready for floors. You move. The world narrows to cold rope burn and a candle flickering where your sternum thinks. Snow slaps, wind heckles, and the lane turns into a mouth you must cross. Each footfall writes a letter the weather tries to erase. The lich gate waits above, black brackets around the sky, punctuation ready to correct your sentence. The dark inside the coffin purrs, pleased with travel, like a cat who finally convinced its people to open the door it was going to ignore anyway. "Do not stop," the holy man orders, and the order becomes the only grammar available. Halfway up, the bells attempt persuasion instead of force. They soften, honeyed, a lullaby you remember from a room you were never held in. The sweetness rises. It's Christmas from a painting, oranges spiked with cloves, goose fat laughing, bread cracking like polite thunder. Your knees wobble. The candle flares as if catching a draft from a fireplace that does not exist. Captain bites your sleeve and tugs, rude and correct. You grunt, slog, count out loud, Rowan, 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 until the name is a metronome beating the dark out of your mouth. At the gate, the storm hunches to fit through. The lich gate's roof moans. Frost fur prickles the iron like fur trying to remember being animal. You lower the coffin onto the sill. The bells toll twice inside your skull, and the 12th bowl in ash you left behind barks its brightness across the distance, a memory with opinions. The holy man plants his feet, lifts both arms, and speaks to the hinge of the world. "This box is a throat," he says. "Let it cough." Captain stamps. The girl squeezes your elbow. The butcher cries without fuss. The lid lifts as if evicted. Darkness rises, taller than smoke, denser than storm. and pauses beneath the gate as if reading instructions. For an instant, the wind stops to eavesdrop. You hold the candle out, both palms open, red ovals shining like coals. The dark bends toward the light the way a question bends toward yes. Tell it its date, the holy man whispers. Names were bait, numbers are bars. Your mouth shapes a calendar. Solstice, ember days, feast, fast, 12th night, done. The bells hit 16 like a joke at a funeral. Back, you say, surprising yourself with authority you borrowed and now owe. You stop at 12. The dark tilts, listens, resents. Captain lowers his head and pushes, not at the box but at your knee, grounding you to this ugly living earth. The girl threads her ribbon through your fingers, red, insisting on existing. The butcher, finally useful, lifts his knife to the sky and reflects the candle like a star that remembers being iron. For a heartbeat, the gate brightens, a mouth choosing to close. Then the coffin laughs. You don't hear it, you feel it, a ripple through wood and muscle, like an old song stepping into a younger throat. It isn't food, you tell the holy man, voice hoarse. It's a story that learned to eat. The dark gleams approval. That is the first thing you have said that it respects. You hate the feeling. Respect is a leash if you hold the wrong end. The bells toll 17, each note walking farther from winter and closer to wherever numbers go to breed. Break the story, the holy man rasps. Tell it wrong. You inhale knives. You exhale error. You talk about a village that cooked in coffins because they had too many pots. About alder that smelled of honey alone. About bells that guarded births and went mute at burials. About a goat promoted to prince by acclamation. About a child who grew up and kept every name and never paid a single bowl. You lie with conviction. The wind laughs snow into your eyes. The dark stares, wounded vanity pooling like sap. It reaches, not to take, but to test. It brushes your candle. The flame gutters, veers, refuses. The red ovals sting and then cool, as if the count forgot what came after 10. Somewhere below, the hut breathes. The villagers fear traveling up the hill like heat. The lich gate's beam pops, wood shifting in old nails. A spine remembering posture. The bells falter, stutter, try 17 again, fail, drop to 13 out of spite. You see it then. Not power, but rhythm. The coffin wins by keeping time you agree to keep. You step forward until your shins kiss the sill, and the candle brands the dark with domestic light. No, you say, kinder than you feel. 12, we end at 12. Then we sleep. The word sleep lands heavy, a blanket thrown over a chair that wanted to be a throne. Captain breathes like a bellows at your hip. The girl's ribbon hums between your fingers, ridiculous and perfect. The butcher adds his knife star to your little constellation. The holy man names the months backward like untying a knot. The dark exhales. Sweetness thins to orchard air after rain. The lid sighs down a finger's breadth. The bells, offended, toll 12 with theatrical reluctance, each note a door closing with a mutter. The gate settles. The storm surprised remembers other villages. You sag, suddenly all borrowed bone. The coffin sits quiet beneath the lintel, listening to itself not move. You know it isn't done. Stories never are. But for the first time, the count is on your tongue, not in your palms. And the night has to ask you what comes next. The walk back down from the lich gate is heavier than the climb. The coffin no longer strains at the rope, but its weight doubles anyway, as if sulking. Every step feels like dragging a secret that refuses to be buried. The holy man mutters the months backward still, voice cracking on September, whispering August, as if ashamed of heat. Captain trots beside you, proud, ribbon fluttering from his horn like a war banner stitched by children. The girl clings to your elbow, smiling too wide, as if grinning could convince bones they're not shaking. At the hut, villagers wait with faces knotted by hunger and hope. They see the coffin arrive and don't cheer. Cheering feels unsafe. Instead, they bow their heads as though the box were both priest and butcher. The holy man sets it down by the hearth, pats the lid once and announces, "We have turned it back." He says it with the confidence of someone lying for the sake of keeping air in the room. The villagers nod, grateful to be lied to. Gratitude is lighter than truth. The ash has changed. The bowls are still there, 12 bright, one sketching itself beyond, but the edges blur, like chalk smeared by rain. Someone whispers, It forgot. Someone else whispers, "It remembers differently." You stare until the ovals swim, then look away before they start arranging themselves into letters. Your palms sting where the red marks glow, faint, cooling. Captain nudges them, as if trying to smother the heat with goat breath. You let him. The day crawls. No one suggests cooking. The alder pile outside lies buried under snow, linden stacked neatly inside. The holy man insists linden only, nothing bitter, nothing sour. He says, sweetness is the bribe, bitterness is the tax. Linden is the refusal. It sounds profound until your stomach growls loud enough to mock him. The butcher offers to boil bark. People laugh too hard. The laugh rattles into silence when the coffin creaks, lid twitching once, as if it finds the idea amusing. To keep busy, the girl weaves straw into dolls, each one tied with the last threads of her ribbon. She names them after the bowls in the ash. First, second, third. She stops at 11. She will not name the 12th. You watch her set the dolls in a row by the fire, their straw hands linked, their little heads bowing toward the coffin. Captain sniffs them, unimpressed, then sits guard anyway. The bells don't come at noon. They don't come at dusk. The absence is heavier than their toll. The villagers pace restless, waiting for a sound that doesn't arrive. When the sun dies, the silence thickens until the rafters groan. It feels like the world is holding its breath to see what you'll do without a metronome. Hunger hums in your veins. Not sharp now, but syrupy, heavy. Your thoughts drag like sleds through snow. You hate how easy it would be to lie down and let the coffin count for you. Night deepens. The holy man orders songs, carols, chants, nonsense rhymes. Anything. Voices rise, ragged and cracked, filling the hut like smoke. You join, throat raw, singing your borrowed name, Rowan, again and again, stapling yourself to the noise. The coffin listens, lid still, wood humming faintly like a drum waiting for hands. The ash glows with its blurred bowls, pulsing in rhythm with the songs. For a moment, you believe it's working. For a moment, you think maybe sound can outlast hunger. Then the dolls burn. It happens without flame. One moment they're straw figures, heads bent, hands linked. The next, they're collapsing into ash, blackening, crumbling silently. The girl screams, lunges, tries to save them, but they're gone in a heartbeat. Only dust remains scattered across the hearth. The villagers stop singing. The silence slams down so hard your ears ring. The coffin creaks once, long and low, like a chuckle from the throat of the floor. The holy man seizes the girl, pulls her back, hisses, "Don't touch!" His face is pale, sweat streaming. "It has eaten likeness," he whispers. "It's learning shortcuts." His words taste like nails. The butcher curses, spits on the floor and shouts at the box, voice breaking, "Take me already." The lid doesn't move. The dark doesn't stir. The butcher collapses in sobs. The villagers stare at him with something worse than pity, relief that it isn't them. You kneel at the hearth, scoop up a handful of straw ash. It's cold, too cold. You press it between your palms, into the red ovals, and the marks flare bright, hotter than fire. The ash seeps into you, not staining, but sinking. You gasp. The dark inside the coffin shifts in answer. Not opening, not closing, just listening. You feel it waiting, patient, indulgent, curious. It knows now that you've touched what it touched. The girl sobs into her hands. Captain butts your knee, furious at your stupidity. You don't argue. The holy man grabs your wrist, sees the glow, and his face crumples. "It's written you," he says. "It's binding you in advance." His voice shakes, but his eyes burn. You must miswrite yourself. Tell it a wrong version. Live the lie so hard it can't taste the truth. He looks at the villagers, then back at you. Otherwise, when the 13th comes, it will not have to ask. You'll walk into it smiling. The coffin creaks again, satisfied. The bells do not ring, the dark does not spill, it doesn't need to. Tonight, silence is its feast, and you are already on the menu. You begin by breaking yourself where it won't show. The holy man sits you on a three-legged stool and teaches you how to misremember. Answer to a name that prickles. Claim a childhood with too much sun. Insist you hate apples, hate bells, hate linden most of all. Wear your wrongness like a coat, he says, pinching ash into your eyebrows, drawing a new map on your face. The girl plats straw through your hair, a crown of ordinary. Captain approves this makeover by chewing the ends and looking satisfied with the flavor of lies. You practice not flinching when someone says your real name across the room like dropped cutlery. Smile, the holy man orders, and you do, a shabby crescent that shows exactly the right amount of tooth for a stranger. When you stand, your shadow wobbles as if it missed rehearsal. Good, he says. If your shadow can't keep up, maybe the coffin can't either. The butcher watches from the fire, eyes raw as meat, murmuring recipes of identities. Smoke your history, salt your edges, boil until tender. You laugh, and it sounds exactly like a person who once knew how. You take the wrong you outside and test the fit. The snow receives your new footsteps like a bored clerk stamping counterfeit documents. Breath fogs from the changed mouth. It tastes different, honestly. Less older, more mint, like you licked a coin and called it medicine. You walk the lane backward, then sideways, tracing a letter the dark might misread. At the lich gate you do not look up. You look through, pretending the gate is only wood and hinge, not a jaw. Captain leads, sure-footed and officious, tugging you off your own old tracks. The holy man follows with a clay pot of linden embers, wafting sweet smoke over your sleeves until the fabric drinks refusal. He dabs soot under your tongue, bitter, bee-sour, and says, when it asks, answer with this flavor. The girl plants straw dolls under the eaves again, tiny spies with braver spines. You touch each doll's head and christen them with impossible names. Tuesday after nobody, river left, don't know. The dolls rustle. The snow learns them. The wind carries them away like letters it intends to deliver. After dark, the village performs your new biography as if the world were a stage with bad seating. People take turns saying how you hate cinnamon, how you once fell in love with a horse. Captain pretends not to hear, how you cannot tolerate bells and vomit at the first toll. Someone insists you were born in summer, under a sky that smelled like warm bread. Someone else swears you sneeze at alder smoke and swoon at the sight of stew. The room nods, committing errors to memory. Meanwhile, you sit on the stool, breathing linden like a choir boy, repeating your borrowed name until it tastes of splinters and thread. The coffin listens. The lid does not rise, but the wood creaks the way a chair does when it decides not to speak. In the ash, the 12 blurs farther. The 13th sketch stutters, erases, redraws itself like a nervous student. Hope lifts its head, thin as a match flame. You grin without teeth. The holy man blesses the grin with salt. Captain headbutts your shin to keep you from floating. If this is deceit, it tastes cleaner than truth has tasted in weeks. Then the villagers stage a feast made entirely of shadows. They hang a sheet against the wall, set a candle behind, and parade spoons and knives, bowls and geese as silhouettes. The children gasp, fooled with righteous enthusiasm. The adults clap politely, as if to applaud an executioner who learned piano. The shadow goose browns beautifully. The shadow gravy thickens, then ribbon pours. You pantomime eating with such commitment your jaw aches. Let it dine on the idea, the holy man whispers. Let it gorge on the rumor. The coffin answers with a slow derisive groan that curls your toes. The sheet sags. The shadow goose collapses into a smudge. The dolls under the eaves blacken at the edges, then hold, singed but unconsumed. Something has learned restraint, or merely timing. You swallow air until it pretends to be soup. Captain chews the sheet's corner and drags it away from dangerous metaphysics. In the hearth, the 13th line fades to a hair, a rumor of a circle too tired to finish itself. The holy man says it's working, in the voice people use when they will break if it isn't. You sleep wrong on purpose, on your side instead of your back, hands under the pillow where your name can't reach them. The village breathes in small, careful sips. The coffin pretends to nap, wood ticking like cooling iron. At midnight the bells return without ceremony, soft as gloves, close as breath. 1. Your skull hums. 2. The straw dolls shiver, but stay. 3. The lid tests the rope with the patience of a thief who already knows the patrol's schedule. Rowan, the air suggests. No, your mouth replies, tasting soot and linden, a recipe for resistance. The bells do not argue. They agree, and their agreement is a terrible kindness. 4, 5, 6. The count stays inside the year, obedient, almost polite. The holy man smiles and does not believe his own face. Captain lays his head across your shins, a weight that says belong to here now. You focus on the taste the priest brewed and the lie you have become. 7, 8, 9. The ash bowls blur to fog. The 13th erases itself like chalk under rain. 10, 11. Your palms cool until the red ovals feel like old gossip. 12. Silence lands like a bird on a warm roof, and then the coffin speaks in a voice you do not hear so much as where. Come. Just that. One syllable. Polite. Inevitable. A chair pulled back from a table you forgot to set. The goat explodes upward, horns thudding the lid. The rope holds. The holy man flings a circle of salt so wide it baptizes the rafters. The butcher laughs once, badly, because sometimes humor is the last knife. The dolls ignite, tiny, clean flames, and die with no smoke at all. Your false name thins in your mouth like cloth worn to thread. Come, it repeats, closer, as if whispered through your own teeth. Your new biography trembles, a stage set in a wind. The lich gate booms somewhere inside your ribs, not outside in snow. A door you carry remembers being open. Captain plants his hooves on your chest, hard enough to bruise, eyes bright with an insulted kind of love. The holy man seizes your face and smears more ash into your mouth, fingers shaking. Say after, he orders. Say Tuesday, say nobody. You open to speak, and the bells begin counting backward. 12, 11, 10. Each number peels something from you. Memory like bark, hunger like skin, fear like a shirt you didn't know you were wearing. 9, 8, 7. The lid lifts the width of a coin you've already spent. 6, 5, 4. Captain lowers his head until his horn rests at your throat, anchoring your pulse to this cheap reality. 3, 2, 1, 0. The dark leans past the rope, as if 0 were a door, and you understand too late that the coffin has learned a better math. 0 is not silence. 0 is a hole, and you feel yourself tipping toward it. The coffin breathes out, a draught colder than the storm, sweeter than clove, sharper than alder. The rope stretches, threads snapping one by one, whispering their deaths like hairs pulled from a scalp. The villagers collapse against the walls, hands over mouths because their names are already trying to climb out. The holy man screams numbers at random. 7, 25, 9, 1, 1, 1, like charms, like bricks, like any nonsense to block the void. Captain presses harder on your chest, a living sandbag against the pull. His horns rattle with the pressure, but he does not move. You open your mouth to say a wrong name, any name, but nothing comes. Not Rowan, not the invented ones, not even your own. The void has stolen the alphabet from your tongue. All you can taste is sweetness, thick, syrupy, a banquet meant for swallowing people whole. The butcher sobs, pounding the floor with fists, begging to be taken in your place. The darkness ignores him. It only has eyes for you, though eyes is the wrong word. It has intention. The girl with the ribbon lunges forward, clutching the last red thread between her teeth. She ties it to your wrist so tightly the skin breaks. Blood beads falls into the ash, and the 13th bowl erupts bright again. Not faint, not sketchy, complete, radiant, undeniable. The hut trembles. The villagers scream. You feel the marks in your palms blaze until they aren't marks anymore. They are openings. The coffin whispers, "Come," and this time it uses your blood as the ink. Captain bellows, the most furious sound you've ever heard from him, and rams the coffin so hard the entire box shifts across the floor. The lid slams shut with a thunderclap. The rope breaks in two places, but somehow the lid stays down. The dark sucks back in, annoyed, cheated, but not defeated. The bells toll once, low, guttural, like a cough, then silence. You collapse. Your palms steam. The girl hugs your arm so tightly you can't breathe. The holy man falls flat on his face, whispering thanks in 7 languages. The butcher vomits bile into the ash, still sobbing. The villagers shake, trembling like wheat in wind. For a moment, the only living thing that looks unafraid is Captain. He plants himself in front of the coffin, daring it to move again. His horns drip wood splinters. His breath smells like judgment. The holy man pushes himself up, face grey, eyes burning. "It has learned 0, he whispers. "It has learned how to erase the count, so it may never finish. That is the worst hunger, one that does not end because it has unmade ending." His voice trembles. "We cannot let it keep the number. We must trick it into closing the book." The villagers moan, terrified, but they listen. He points at the ash bowls, 12 glowing, 13th blazing, and the faint sketch of 14 waiting at the edge. "We will uncount," he says. "We will walk it backward, force it to forget. He looks at you. You are the ledger. You must begin. You shake your head, but Captain butts you as if saying, "Yes, fool." Your palms still burn. You raise them, glowing red, and speak. 12. The bowls flare, angry. 11, you say louder. The glow flickers. The holy man joins. 10. Villagers, hesitant, follow. 9, 8, 7. Each number feels like pushing a boulder uphill. The coffin thrums, furious, the lid rattling against nails that aren't there. 6, 5, 4. The hut shakes. Plaster falls from the rafters. The storm outside screams against the shutters. Captain stomps, bleating rhythm. The girl cries numbers through her sobs, her voice thin but unbreakable. 3, 2. The bowls shrink, their light dimming, the ash smudging as if being erased. 1. You open your mouth, ready to say the final word, but nothing comes. 0 is waiting, smiling, patient. The coffin creaks. The darkness licks the seam. Your tongue is heavy, glued, you cannot say it. Captain saves you again. He stamps so hard the boards crack and his bleat rings like thunder. The holy man shouts the word for you, spitting it with salt and desperation. 0! The ash goes dark. Every bowl vanishes. The hut falls silent, too silent. The coffin stops moving. For the first time in weeks it seems truly inert. A box of wood. A coffin, nothing more. The villagers collapse, gasping, laughing, crying. Some kiss the floor, some kiss each other. The girl kisses Captain's nose and thanks him. The butcher curls up in the ashes, weeping softly. The holy man drops to his knees and presses his palms to your hands. The marks are gone, smooth skin, empty. He weeps with relief. But you don't. You know better. Because when you close your eyes, you don't see bowls anymore. You see a clock, and it's still ticking. Silence behaves itself for almost an hour, sitting primly in the corners like a guest who hates the party but loves the cake. The coffin looks like furniture again. Dumb, heavy, wood-remembering tree. You try to believe it. You try to let your shoulders become shoulders instead of shields. The holy man sleeps sitting up, head tipped like a wilted candle. The butcher murmurs apologies to recipes. Captain patrols on tiny, furious hooves, daring the box to breathe wrong. You close your eyes to rest them, and there it is behind the lids. Not bowls, not bells. Hands on a clock, dragging forward. You listen. No tolling, no breath. Still the hut has a new rhythm. Tick stitched to tock, soft as moth wings, regular as frost. You find it under the floor, in the joinery, in the hinge of your jaw. It is not sound so much as schedule, the idea of time wearing boots. The holy man wakes with a jerk and swears the fire shifted. The girl with the ribbon lifts her head and whispers, "I heard the gate blink." Captain snorts because gates don't blink, and then he stares uphill anyway, insulted by evidence. Morning loosens the snow's grip. Light wanders back into the lanes like a stray cat forgiven for history. People step outside in pairs, thin bodies wrapped in thicker hope. They clear drifts, they check roofs, they glance at the lich gate without naming it. You join them because staying inside is how fear learns furniture. The wind tastes of thaw, of tin and meltwater, of a promise no calendar signed. For 3 minutes your chest remembers spring as if it ever met her. Then, from nowhere and everywhere, the tick-tock swells a hair, a pulse-learning ambition. The holy man calls a council over a breakfast of steam and stubbornness. "We closed the book," he says, voice sanded by gratitude, "so we must keep it shut." He proposes hours, not meals. Work by the tick, rest by the tock. Speak when the second hand passes the broom's shadow. It's nonsense that feels like discipline. The butcher volunteers to count aloud while mending harness. The girl counts while she braids the last straw into little crowns that won't ignite if you glare hard enough. Captain declines counting. Goats hold grudges against numbers. Tasks find fingers because dread hates industry. You gather linden, you scrape soot into jars like medicine you haven't invented names for. You sew the rope into a prettier knot over the lid's patience. No bowls return to ash. No bells hop their fences. Tick and tock continue, polite as landlords. You begin to lose the thread of fear and discover a new one. Anticipation dressed as competence. It feels almost good. That is how you know it's a trick, but your bones want the lie anyway. At noon, the clock speaks without changing volume. Every tick is a step toward the door. Every tock is the door pretending it wasn't. The butcher's counting loses place. then finds it at the wrong number and keeps it on purpose. The girl hums a counter melody that fits nowhere and calms everyone. The holy man draws a face of a clock in ash and puts the hands at 12 forever. "We will rehearse noon until noon surrenders," he says, "and if nonsense does not stop hunger, it at least makes a fence around it." You test the coffin with civilian questions. "Are you empty?" No answer. "Are you furniture?" A creak that could be settling or sarcasm. "Are you finished?" The rope slides a fraction, then tightens like a breath reconsidered. You press your palm to the lid. The red ovals are gone, but heat remembers you. No music under the wood, only patience stacked on patience. Captain inserts his head between you and the grain and exhales goat into your ribs. "Right," you say, chastened, because nothing has slain you more reliably than this animal's competence. Afternoon brings visitors the storm forgot to cancel. 3 figures appear at the lane's mouth, snow to their knees, faces shuttered. Traders once, now famine's accountants. They carry nothing but news in torn bags. "How fares the valley?" the holy man asks, and their eyes do the arithmetic. Houses emptied of names, barns full of wind, a church where the bell rings itself. You offer linden water because refusal would corrode your tongue. They drink like people who miss the idea of cups. One notices the coffin. "We did that," he says softly. "A village upriver. Worked until it didn't." You do not ask the last question. The answer is in his shoulders. They leave a rumor as payment. A tinker who keeps time in a pocket and trades extra minutes for clean iron. The girl loves this at once. Her smile rebounds off the rafters like a thrown coin. The butcher glares because riddles taste like onions. Captain hates all tinkers equally on principle. The holy man tucks the rumor into his sleeve. "We have enough minutes," he lies, and the tick-tock grins behind the walls. Dusk paints the snow with bruise light again. The lich gate looks taller, which is rude. You walk up with Captain because your feet invented this habit, and habits keep wolves confused. At the crest you find prints that do not break the crust. Ovals, heelless, polite, a procession of not quite feet crossing from nothing to nowhere. Each print is spaced like a second. The gate's beam ticks in the cold, a tiny complaint in old timber. You touch the iron and it does not stick to your tongue because you learned that lesson, almost. On the way down you hear the first misstrike. Not bells, not bowls, not voice, time itself catching a toe. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The slip is small and holy. You run. Inside, the hut inhales as one organism. The ash clock the holy man drew trembles, one hand fluttering like a moth in someone else's jar. The coffin does not move. It does not need to. Something larger is adjusting its cuffs and looking for a chair. "Talk," the holy man orders, and the room tells the ugliest truths it can bear. Who considered stealing seed, who hid onions, who wanted to push the coffin into the stream. Confession straightens the walls for a heartbeat. Then the misstrike returns, longer. Tick, tock, tick. The butcher drops his needle. The girl starts to cry without knowing why. Captain climbs onto the bench like a sailor testing a deck. You feel the shape of the old hunger inside the new machinery, a wolf wearing a clock to the feast. "We won the count," you say, more to the lid than the room. "So it borrowed the calendar." The holy man nods as if he'd rather not be right. Night comes with clean hands and bad plans. You bank the fire until it purrs. You place the candle on the lid because rituals keep ropes polite. Everyone lies down without believing in sleep. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Between them, a third thing grows, the way a shadow invents itself between footsteps. A barely voice saying when. Not now, not later. When. It fits behind your teeth like a seed that will not spit. You wrap your arms around Captain's neck and feel his stubborn blood insist on here. The last thing you hear before your eyes betray you is the clock you didn't draw, turning its hands toward a number you do not own. The last thing you smell is linden becoming memory. The last thing you taste is ash that refuses to be a bowl. When sleep takes you, it uses the careful voice of a debt collector who promises to come back at a better hour. You believe it because that is how nights survive themselves. And just before the dark levels the room flat, the lid says a word you've never learned in any language, and your bones translate it as soon. You wake to a room already awake, but pretending otherwise. The villagers lie with their eyes closed, breathing carefully as if fooling the dawn might delay it. The fire is a dull wound in the hearth. The holy man sits cross-legged, fingers drumming time against his knees. Tick-tock, tick-tock. though the sound comes from nowhere he touches. The butcher stares at the ceiling, lips moving silently, perhaps naming meats, perhaps naming fears. Captain snores once, then deliberately stops, to prove he is in control of even sleep. Outside, the snow has retreated an inch, surrendering slowly, as though it never wanted the job in the first place. Drips fall from eaves like hesitant punctuation. You step into the lane, taste the air, and nearly stumble. It tastes of thaw, of water too young to remember ice. For a heartbeat you dare to imagine the season turning. Then, faint and cruel, the mist-strike comes again. Tick, tock, tick. A pause too long, a gap wide enough to fit a throat. Back inside, the ash floor has redrawn itself. No bowls, no clock, not even smears. Blank, flat, offended. The holy man sees it and flinches. An empty ledger, he murmurs. It erased the debt so it may start a new one. The girl whispers that blank paper is worse than written. The butcher snarls that at least bowls were honest. Captain bites the air as if trying to catch the gap between ticks. Furious he cannot. You touch your palms, half expecting the red ovals to return. They don't. That almost frightens you more. The villagers convene, hollow-bellied and desperate for rules. The holy man proposes they live only in repetition, same words, same motions, until time itself gives up and wanders off. He assigns tasks: shovel snow, gather wood, stir nothing in the pot. Everything exactly as yesterday. The butcher scoffs but obeys. The girl smiles bravely and sweeps footprints back into invisibility. You fetch water, breaking the ice with a stick. The reflection trembles and splits. Two faces staring up, neither entirely yours. You drink anyway because thirst doesn't care whose face it wears. At noon, the first new trick arrives. Not bells, not bowls. Whispers, faint but insistent, curling up from the coffin's seam. They sound like questions asked in languages you almost understand. The holy man claps his hands over his ears. The butcher leans closer, greedy for whatever bargain might hide inside. The girl begins to hum to drown it out. You crouch beside Captain, pressing your forehead to his horn, and the whispers soften, retreating like thieves spotting a locked chest. When they fade, the silence is heavier than before, packed with promises not yet spent. The holy man marks the lid with chalk, a crude circle bisected by a line. "We will give it a face to stare at so it forgets ours," he says. You add marks of your own, clumsy numerals, counting backward from 12. The coffin creaks once, disapproving, but does not erase the graffiti. For a while the villagers relax. They sit by the fire, share lies about food they once had, sing half songs with broken melodies. It almost feels like a feast in the negative, full of hunger but shared and therefore bearable. Evening brings the mist-strike louder. Tick, tock, tick, as though the world has a limp. The sound rolls across the rafters, under the floor, into your bones. Everyone freezes. Then, impossibly, the coffin answers with its own rhythm. Creak, pause, creak. The two sounds sync, clock and coffin, call and response, until the hut itself feels like a body with two hearts. The holy man drops to his knees, shouting prayers, trying to stuff syllables between the beats. Captain charges, ramming the box, snapping the rhythm for a single blessed second. The silence that follows is not relief, it is expectation. The ash floor writes again, quick as lightning. Not bowls, not clocks. This time doors, 12 small rectangles sketched in perfect symmetry. Each door has a handle, each door faces inward. The villagers back away, muttering, crossing themselves, spitting for luck. You crouch, staring, unable to look away. The 13th door begins to form, faint lines quivering, waiting for permission. You press your palms to the floor without meaning to, and the lines brighten. The holy man yanks you back, furious. "Do not open," he warns, even in thought. Night falls heavier than usual, dragging with it the weight of doors unslammed. No bells toll, no bowls glow, only the tick and the tock, the limp and the echo, reminding you that time is no longer yours. The villagers huddle close, voices low, arguing about which door leads out, which door leads in, which door leads nowhere at all. The butcher insists he sees movement behind one of them, shadows pacing, waiting. The girl braids straw into a key and presses it into your hand. Captain settles on your lap, warm, insistent, a guard against choices you don't know you're making. As you drift towards sleep, you see the doors even with your eyes closed. They float behind your lids, neat and patient, each one waiting for a hand to turn its handle. And though you tell yourself you won't, though you swear you never will, your fingers twitch in your dreams, reaching. You dream with your hands. They move before the rest of you decides, drifting through the dark like thieves casing their own house. The 12 doors hover behind your eyelids, neat as choir stalls, each with a handle burnished by 100 guesses. Captain sleeps across your shins, a sandbag against drift. The holy man snores like a saw. The butcher mumbles recipes for lox, boil, brine, braise. The girl whispers the names she gave the straw keys. Tuesday after nobody, river left, don't know. Like a lullaby against choosing. You pick the wrong door on purpose. The one that isn't brightest, isn't nearest, doesn't hum your bone's name. 7th from the left, handle dull, hinge sulking. Your dream hand closes around it. Cold climbs your wrist like a bracelet deciding to be a snake. You turn. The door opens without sound, only temperature. Winter spilling through summer that forgot its coat. Behind it there is no room, only an angle, a fold in the hut where time stubbed its toe and kept walking. You step through because that is the kind of animal you are. Curious even on an empty stomach. The lane appears, snow kneeling under a wind that can't be bothered to shout. The lich gate stands at the top of the hill, taller than it was this morning, smaller than the story says. The bells do not ring. Instead you hear tick-tock sewn into distant hoofbeats, as if a clock were being ridden down from another century. The moon is a smear too bored to focus. You taste linden and ash on your tongue, refusal and memory trying to braid. Captain is not with you. That knowledge arrives as a cold bruise. You walk anyway because sleep taught your feet bad manners. Halfway up, the world does the trick where everything stops pretending to be separate. The snow is the sky. The sky is the gate. The gate is your ribs. Your ribs are the coffin lid trying to learn how to be a door without breaking. You press your palm to the post, and it is warm, which should not be true. A whisper crawls up from the wood, older than argument. Come, not hungry, not sweet, not sour, just administrative. You pull your hand away because bureaucracy terrifies you more than monsters. The figure that waits beneath the gate is made of subtraction. You see it by what it removes. Stars edges your plan, no tracks beneath it, no breath on the air. It tilts where a head might be. You give it a wrong name. Rowan, you say, tasting soot. After, you add, to salt the lie. Nobody, because the holy man recommended cowardice as strategy. The figure hears you and arranges silence into a smile. Behind you the lane unspools history, fast and generous. You see the first coffin dragged across stones, a triumphant joke on poverty. You see alder stacked like hymnals. You see bowls appear in ash, patient as chores. You see a woman close a lid on a calf and promise not to look when it stops kicking. You see a boy, your shape, your shadow, stand with his hands out, red ovals bright as fresh fruit. This is the village's calendar. Hunger writing itself in wood and smoke and nerve. You hate it for being gorgeous. Why 12? You ask the subtraction. It answers by removing a month from your memory. You feel the hole where April used to live. Mud, frogs, a glove lost romantically. Panic skitters your ribs. Put it back. It doesn't. Bureaucrats never return forms they've filed. You say the only word that learned to save you. No. The word is small and dressed badly, a peasant at court. It stands anyway. You do the thing that almost works. You tell the story wrong. You talk about too many pots, about alder that tastes of honey alone, about a goat elected mayor on a platform of refusing arithmetic. You talk about bells that never learned to count, only to celebrate. You talk about a coffin used for storing blankets and love letters, about linden smoke thick as hymns and just as useless. The subtraction listens, offended at first, then curious, then bored. Bored is victory when hunger expected worship. The hoofbeats arrive, neat as punctuation. A cart rolls out of the night, wheels negotiating snow like a good lawyer. The driver wears time like a coat. The tinker from the rumour, or a cousin to it, or the rumour itself in boots. He lifts a watch, opens its mouth, and the tick-tock leaps out and joins the air. Trade? He asks, accent from a country clock's invented to feel important. Minutes for metal, hours for names. You hate him immediately for how handsome his offers sound. What about endings, you ask? His smile is a hinge. Priceless. The subtraction tilts toward him. The coffin in your ribs lifts its lid a finger's width. You understand, suddenly and painfully, that time intends to buy hunger a better calendar. If you let them barter, the count will have new numbers, numbers that grow their own ladders. You reach for Captain and find straw instead. The girl's key, don't know, waits in your pocket like a suggestion you forgot to hear. You hold it between finger and thumb, flimsy and golden with stubbornness. This, you tell the tinker, buys ignorance. We need that more than minutes. He laughs. It is an elegant sound with knives in it. Ignorance is what hunger eats between courses. The subtraction holds out an arm shaped like a question. The watch ticks faster. The gate lowers its shoulders like a doorframe bracing for a tall guest. You do the stupid correct thing. You put the straw key in your mouth and bite. Dry sweetness, summer's autograph, the snap of something deciding to be useful. You spit the broken halves into your palm and blow them at the watch. Straw dust coats the gears. The tick stutters. The tock sulks. The lid in your ribs coughs. The tinker's smile sheds polish and shows bone. Rude, he says, genuinely wounded. Correct, you answer, and hate how proud you sound. The subtraction takes a step. The ground does not notice. It offers its hand the way a drowning offers a lake. You step back. After, you say, choosing the wrong truth. Tuesday. Nobody. You point downhill, where Captain probably snores on your legs and the holy man probably drools into a prayer and the butcher probably dreams of onions that never apologize. I belong to that. The subtraction tries bureaucracy again. Come, you risk poetry. I can't. I'm busy being here. The gate shivers. The tinker sighs and closes his watch with a polite click that sounds like a door learning manners. Next village, he says, and the cart edits itself away, minutes folding like napkins. The subtraction lingers, insulted by your refusal to be counted elegantly. It removes another small thing from you, your memory of a particular laugh, light on stairs, and waits to see if you notice. You do. Anger arrives like a thaw. Give it back, you say. No, says the subtraction, which is new and therefore infuriating. It learned your favorite word and filed it badly. You run. Not from fear this time, but from schedule. You slam back through the door you chose wrong on purpose and wake, heart boxing your ribs. Captain is a weight and a mercy across your thighs. The hut is a bowl full of people pretending to be soup. The ash floor is blank, except for a single straw filament, shaped like a key, lying where your dream spit would have landed. The holy man wakes, sees it, and laughs like a door unjamming. The butcher startles and demands a recipe for sleep. The girl touches the filament and says, "You pick don't know." Tick, tock, both softer. You press your hand to the coffin lid. It is only wood. It is not only wood. After, you whisper. To the night, to your name, to the mouth inside the box. The dark listens like a clerk who doesn't hate you quite as much as yesterday. The lich gate uphill clicks once, as if checking its lock. You close your eyes and hold the wrong you close, because for once the wrong thing is the only tool that fits the screw. Sleep takes you, irritated, and for the first time it does not ask when, it asks whether. Morning arrives with less bite. The storm has retreated into its den, leaving behind a crust of snow hard enough to walk without sinking. The villagers stumble outside, cautious, suspicious, as if the sky might punish them for leaving the hut. The lich gate looms at the hilltop, plain and empty, but every back is careful not to face it. The coffin rests where you left it, lid bound with rope tied so many times it resembles a scar. For the first time in weeks, the ash on the hearth stays blank. No bowls, no doors, no clocks. Blankness itself becomes suspicious. The holy man takes this as a victory. It starves, he declares, voice cracked but firm. He sprinkles salt across the threshold, then rubs soot under his eyes like war paint. The girl with the ribbon ties what little remains of red to the peg that anchors the rope, a bright bandage on splintered wood. The butcher mutters that silence is never empty, it's just chewing somewhere you can't hear. Captain sneezes, stamping once, which everyone accepts as prophecy. You keep your palms hidden in your sleeves, terrified of what might return if you look too closely. Tasks find the day because fear doesn't like idle hands. Snow is shoveled, wood is chopped. Nets are mended though no river runs. You help repair a fence with sticks too thin to matter, hammering frost into nails until the sound convinces you that the world still respects effort. Every few minutes, you glance at the hut's chimney, expecting smoke to bend wrong or vanish into silence. But the air holds ordinary, almost ordinary. That almost rattles you more than bowls ever did. By noon the villagers gather, thin faces turn toward the holy man, demanding direction. He hesitates, then says, "We must burn the coffin." The words drop like stones. The butcher recoils, eyes wide, shaking his head. "You don't burn the table you eat from." The girl whispers, "If we burn it, it will crawl out." Captain growls low, an ugly sound that doesn't belong to goats. You stand between them and the box, palms sweating inside your sleeves. The holy man's voice sharpens. "If we leave it, it will count again. It has already tried clocks, doors, 0. What will be next? We must end it." His certainty is brittle, but it is enough. They drag the coffin outside. Snow crunches under wood, rope squeals in protest. You grip one corner, Captain shouldering the other, like he has always been part of this lunacy. The villagers circle, chanting nonsense words for courage. The butcher weeps openly, muttering apologies to every cut of meat he ever dreamed of. The girl throws handfuls of straw like blessings. At the center of the lane they build a pyre. Branches stacked, linden and alder together, sweetness and bitterness, bribe and tax. The coffin is placed atop, a king on a throne it doesn't deserve. The holy man lights the fire. Flames leap, orange claws raking sky. Smoke twists black and white, linden and alder wrestling in the air. The villagers cheer, voices ragged, hopeful, terrified. You expect the lid to fly open, the darkness to spill, the bells to toll. But nothing happens. The wood burns. The coffin crackles, splits, collapses into glowing ribs. Ash drifts upward like birds forgetting wings. For a moment, one impossible moment, it seems finished. Then the sound begins. Not bells, not tick-tock, laughter. Low, hollow, rolling up from the fire's belly. The villagers freeze. The flames roar higher, brighter, as though fed by something not wood. The coffin's ribs collapse inward, forming a circle, a perfect glowing bowl. The ash on the ground shifts, sketching the count again. 1, 2, 3, bright ovals forming faster than ever. The holy man shouts prayers, voice breaking, but the numbers won't stop. The butcher screams, covering his ears. The girl clutches Captain's horn, whispering, don't know, like a shield. You stumble forward, palms out, marks blazing red again, though you swore they were gone. The bowl of fire pulses. 10, 11, 12. The laughter grows louder, surrounding you, inside you, using your ribs as drums. 13 flares, complete, undeniable. The villagers sob, some collapse, some run, but the count keeps going. 14, 15. The holy man grabs your wrist, eyes wild. It will count until there are no numbers left, until the year itself is ash. Stop it. You stare at your palms, at the red ovals glowing like wounds. You understand then. The coffin isn't just a box. It's a calendar hungry for eternity. And you are its page. The fire surges, ash swirling into shapes, doors, clocks, bowls, all layered, all spinning. You hear whispers braided into laughter, promises of hunger that never ends. Your throat tightens, but one word fights free. No. Small, desperate, ragged. But the fire stutters, the laughter hiccups. Captain bleats, furious, stamping in rhythm with you. The girl screams no too high and sharp. The villagers join, voices cracking but united. No, no, no. The ash trembles. The count falters. 16 flickers, half-formed. The bowl collapses, spilling fire into snow. The laughter fades. The pyre smoulders. Only embers remain, glowing faint, quiet. The villagers collapse in exhaustion, sobbing, praying, whispering disbelief. The holy man grips your shoulders, trembling. It isn't gone, he says, but you broke its sentence. His eyes search yours. You made the word into a wall. You look down at your palms. The marks are still there, faint but permanent. Scars that will never heal. Captain presses his head against your chest. Warm, insistent. The girl ties the last thread of ribbon around your wrist, red against the scars. The butcher mutters that hunger never ends, it just changes recipe. The holy man whispers a prayer of thanks that sounds like an apology. The coffin is ash, but the hill still waits. and you know the lich gate is listening. The ash cools to a skin, thin and grey as breath on a mirror. The villagers stand around what was a coffin and is now a hesitation, a dark smear in white snow. Nobody speaks. The holy man pinches soot between finger and thumb and draws a small circle on his own brow, then on yours, then on Captain's horn. Not victory, he says softly, but punctuation. The butcher kneels and sifts the embers with both hands, as if searching for a bone he once promised to love. The girl with the ribbon, down to a single thread, ties it round your wrist again, red stubbornness against the chill. Your palms ache where the ovals live as scars. When you close your eyes, you don't see bowls or doors or clocks. You see the word you taught yourself to trust. No, the lich gate waits, a black hinge on the hill. Even burned wood leaves a mouth behind, and the hill is a mouth. You feel it in the way the wind edits itself before it touches you. We finish this, the holy man says, not because he is brave, but because grammar demands an object. You shoulder a spade. The butcher takes a second. Captain positions himself as foreman of everything. The girl carries a jar of linden coals wrapped in cloth. We will cede the gate with refusal, she announces, and the ridiculous grandeur of that sentence makes everyone stand straighter. The climb is shorter than it has ever been, which means the hill is learning manners or you are learning purpose. Snow gives way cleanly. Your steps ring on buried wood like knuckles on a locked door. When you reach the gate, frost furs the iron, but the beam is warm under your hand. A pulse transferred from a story that refuses to die messy. You dig. The spade bites the throat of the path, lifting black earth that smells like an old book coming open. The butcher digs beside you, breath counting without meaning to. The holy man marks 12 scratches across the beam with a nail and names the months backward, the way untying demands. You bury the linden coals first, small orange hearts tucked into a bed of dirt. On top of them you pour ash from the coffin, a thin grey river. On top of that you lay alder chips, honey bitter, and on top of that a handful of salt that catches what light remains and hoards it. The girl presses her thumb into the mound and whispers, "Don't know," then looks embarrassed and defiant at once. Captain stamps once, approving the architecture. The holy man closes his eyes and says, "We will let it sleep." The word settles over the hill like a blanket. Sleep, not death. Sleep, not surrender. Sleep, like a law. As if to test your audacity, the wind carries a single sound up from the village. Metal biting stone, a knock in the wrong rhythm, and then stops. No bells, no tick. A page turned and left blank on purpose. You step back from the mound and the gate answers by not answering. Silence is not kindness, but it can be a contract. The butcher lowers his spade and exhales something that might be apology, might be steam. "What now?" he asks, because bodies must choose verbs. Now you go home. That's the verb. You descend with your hands empty and your logic intact. The lane receives you as if you'd remembered the password this time. In the yard, the villagers look at your faces and decide to be a little less afraid. The holy man writes 3 letters in ash above the door, "No," and laughs because it feels childish and right. The butcher promises to learn a joke that doesn't end with meat. The girl feeds Captain a sliver of bark as if it were sugared almonds, and he suffers the theatre with regal disdain. You take water from the bucket and drink greedily until your mouth remembers its job is to live. Afternoon leans gently against the shutters, and inside the hut the air forgets to taste like alder. The rope that once bound the lid is coiled on the hearth like a sleepy snake, merely rope again. The villagers gather in a ring and trade their names back like winter coats retrieved from a peg. "Ox," the butcher begins and shakes his head. "I am Thomas." "Cole," the girl says, then grins. "I am May." The holy man lifts his palm and lets the old title fall off. "I am Eli," he offers, and the room repeats it as if testing a good tool. You touch your own chest and say carefully, "I am. Rowan will do today." It is true enough and false enough to keep your ribs honest. There is nothing to cook. There is everything to say. People speak of what they refused and what they couldn't and what they will learn to next time. Someone begins a carol out of habit and stops at the sweet parts. Sweets are promises. Instead, you sing a work chant, slow and steady, about moving stones and counting only to 12 and sleeping like a field sleeps under snow. The refrain is a small, unglorious miracle. No more. Captain hums in goat, an octave lower than hope. The floor does not write. The roof does not listen. Your body believes you for as long as the song lasts. Evening brings a gift that feels almost rude. Hunger without dread. It gnaws, yes, but with mortal teeth. The holy man breaks the last hard heel of bread into 16 smaller lies and hands them round. No one pretends they are feast. Everyone pretends they are enough. You chew carefully, down to the sound. If flavor is memory, you decide to remember stone, smoke, linden, salt, the goat's hair under your palm when the world leaned wrong. In the corner, the rope falls into a new coil, content as a tired river finding its proper bed. Night does not ambush you. It sits down with its hat in its hands and asks permission to stay. You let it because that is how you own what used to own you. The girl curls by the hearth with Captain's nose tucked under her chin. Ribbon a sleepy flame. The butcher snores into a promise he will never offer his body to clever mouths again. Eli mutters prayers that sound like thanks because gratitude is the only heresy worth keeping. You lie on straw that stopped being a raft and became a mattress. Your palms stop aching. The scars cool to quiet. The hut smells like wood and people and the absence of counting. You wake once near midnight because habit is a leash with gossip. The world holds still. The hill does not call. The ash beneath the hearth is only ash. Sleep returns like a dog that forgives without forgetting and circles 3 times on your chest before settling. In the second sleep you visit the lich gate and find it ordinary. A frame for weather, a place to hang garlands when garlands learn to exist again. Someone has written a word on its beam with a clumsy finger. No. And you grin as if you were the kind of person who knows how to decorate fate. Dawn comes clean. Hoarfrost stitches bright hems along the fence rails. The stream remembers its lines and reads them out loud. Birds experiment with sounds that haven't been fashionable in months. The villagers find their hands and ask them to build small things. A shelf for a pot they don't own yet. A pen for goats that might decide to multiply. A calendar with 12 empty boxes and no appetite. Eli walks up the hill and does not kneel. Thomas laughs and it doesn't break. May ties a fresh ribbon around Captain's horn and the knot holds like a future. And you, how do you end it? You fetch linden and you brew something that tastes like refusal made gentle. You pour for each person and you say nothing doctrinal. You carry a bowl to the threshold and set it on the sill and watch steam walk into winter like courage that knows when to turn around. You stand in the doorway and listen for bells and clocks and doors and numbers and zero, and you hear none of them. You hear a village breathing, you hear a goat pretending not to be proud. You hear your own name, whatever you choose to call it today, decide to stay. You drink and at last, finally, obscenely perfectly, you sleep. The last sleep tastes different. It does not sneak. It does not stalk. It lays itself down beside you like an equal. Dreams arrive not as traps, but as visits, carrying baskets of scenes too gentle to believe. Summer grass, butter on rye, apples that rot politely, bells that ring only for weddings and never for hunger. You let yourself eat every vision, greedy as a child, because you know they are lies and therefore safe. Captain ambles through the dream, chewing clover, eyeing you with the smugness of an animal who knew from the start that stubbornness beats magic every time. The girl with the ribbon ties it to the sky until stars remember their job. The holy man is younger here, laughing instead of praying. Even the butcher looks whole, holding bread instead of knives. The coffin does not appear. The lich gate does not loom. For once, absence is the miracle. You wake at dawn and realize no one shook you. No bells tolled. No ash-wrote bowls. No whispers pressed your throat. Only the ordinary sound of breath in a crowded room, the symphony of survival. The villagers stir, rubbing their eyes, blinking at a world that finally forgot to count them. Eli, he allows you his name now, always Eli, pats your shoulder and mutters, "It didn't come." The girl squeals, untangling herself from Captain's side, ribbon bright against her hair. Thomas, the butcher, laughs with real humor for the first time, a sound so startling it almost hurts. You sit up, staring at your palms. The scars are faint, pale, nearly healed. Your skin remembers, but your bones are free. Outside, the hill has softened. Snow slouches from the lich gate beam in long dripping icicles. The iron glitters, but does not hum. Birds perch without hesitation. For the first time in months it looks like a gate again, something to pass under, not something that passes judgment. You climb with Captain, of course, because he won't let you breathe alone. At the top, You touch the beam and feel only wood, only cold, only the honesty of objects. The word no still scratches the surface, childish and triumphant. You leave it there, because the best monuments are clumsy. The day stretches itself open. Work finds bodies like water finds low ground. Fences rebuilt, paths cleared, tools repaired. The villagers speak in future tense, awkward at first, then smoother. We will plant. We will mend. We will sing when the frost leaves. Even laughter begins to forget its guilt. Eli drafts a new prayer, short, graceless, full of gratitude. May the girl deserves her real name spoken, adds verses about goats being promoted for bravery. Thomas invents a recipe that uses nothing but hope and water, and it still makes people smile. You do not speak much, but when you do, the words feel yours, not borrowed. Rowan after nobody. Whatever name you carry, it no longer weighs. It walks beside you instead. That night, no one fears sleep. Beds are straw and thin blankets, but they accept you without teeth. Eli snores. May hums. Thomas mutters jokes half finished. Captain insists on curling against your ribs, his breath stubborn, his horns warm. You fall asleep quickly, the way only people who have outrun something terrible can. And when you dream, it is not of doors or bowls or clocks. It is of a village that once cooked in coffins because hunger is inventive. A village that survived because sometimes the wrong words are the right shield. A village that learned to say no until no became bread. Morning after that, the thaw deepens. Streams chatter, birds gossip. The gate stands empty. It's as though you will always remember the marks on your palms, the laughter in the fire, the taste of alder smoke sweetened with rot. You know the story has ended. Not with triumph, not with feast, not with glory, with stubbornness, with scars, with a goat who refused to let you go, with people who found names again, with a word small enough to fit in every mouth. No, the coffin is gone. The hill is only a hill. The year has 12 months again, no more, no less. And you, whatever name you choose to wear, are alive.